Hello everyone, Omni-sensei here with What If I Was Reborn as Batman in Marvel, Part 2. If you enjoy this content, please smash the like button. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to check out the original story linked in the description. I hope you enjoy listening to it.
Arg. Please stop. I'll talk. I swear. Please. The gang leader screamed as the ground got closer and closer. His screams got even louder. When he was a few inches away from the pavement, he came to a halt and was yanked back up to where Batman and the Black Panther stood with the Dora Milaje behind them. Last time. Talk. Batman spoke once more. Okay, I don't know him all that well. One guy came up to me and told me about the weapons. He said I should do something big, to serve as advertisement for the sale, and I would get the weapons for free. What sale? Batman questioned. He is holding a sale at the docks this weekend. I swear that's everything. Please, don't drop me. The gang leader gave one more plea as he saw the bat get closer. Closing his eyes, he waited to feel himself dropping once more, but nothing. Opening his eyes, he realized he was all alone. Away from the scene of interrogation, Batman turned to T'Chaka, who had been silently staring at him for a while. What? Batman spoke up. Were you actually going to drop him? His question caught the Batman off guard, causing him to remain silent for a brief moment before he gave an answer. No. Gwen had just gotten home, closing the window as silently as possible, but she wasn't silent enough, as her mother walked in right after. Gwen, where were you? Do you have any idea how worried your father and I were? I was. Gwen attempted to speak up but went silent. Go on then. Her mom crossed her arms. Your father could have died today, Gwen. He could have died. Gwen remained silent with her eyes trained on her feet, not daring to look her mother in the eye. Her mother let out a sigh seeing her daughter's behavior, but before she could speak up, George had arrived. I'll handle this, Helen. Why don't you go to the boys? George shared a look with his wife, who looked between him and his daughter before walking out of the room. Gwen stood with her father in her room, unable to utter a word. Sit, George ushered to his daughter, who moved to sit on her bed as he moved to sit by her side. You know I care for you, right? Yeah, Gwen responded in a barely audible whisper. George just watched his daughter, who was definitely hiding something from him. Gwen, you can tell me anything. I hope you know that, and when you are ready, you'll tell me whatever it is that you are up to. Gwen nodded, giving her dad a hug. Okay, now why don't we go to dinner before the boys devour everything again? Gwen broke out laughing as she heard what her dad said. Sure, Dad. In a club, damn it. As if that stupid cat wasn't enough, we have a bat after us now. Damn it all. Ulysses Klaus smashed a glass of bourbon when he received the news from his men. What did the mun on the inside say? Klaus asked his men. He said he would deal with the bat, so where is he now? Klaus got more angry the more he spoke. He says he is having some delays with the Union. His henchman begins, I don't care, I want them both dead. But sir, killing the bat right now will turn the Union against us. Bah, who cares if the bat shows up before me? Klaus raises his prosthetic arm and delivers a blast, leaving a hole in the wall. I'll turn him to dust. At King Manor, Sebastian is cleaning his home when Eve walks out of the shadows. Hello, Sebastian. What are you doing here? I get the feeling you don't want to see me. Eve puts on a fake hurt face. Oh please, Eve, you and I both know you wouldn't be here if you didn't need something. There have been talks, she begins. They say you're losing your edge and they're planning a vote. Sebastian comes to a halt. When the new guy joins us, she responds before turning to leave. Watch your back, Captain. With those words, she disappears back into the shadows. So your plan is to barge in during the auction? T'Chaka asked Batman, who was seated before his computer. Indeed, was Batman's response. Why not look for him now? Black Panther asked, confused as to why they weren't on the streets looking for Klaus. I'm busy, seeing as Batman wasn't going to say anything more. T-Shaka walked off to go practice while mumbling something that sounded an awful lot like "annoying bat." Batman took one glance at him before ignoring him. The Batcave security was enough to prevent the cat from going to places where he shouldn't be. Back at his computer, Bats was engrossed in searching for this new Bat person. Now, not that he wasn't flattered that someone took up his mantle, but he wasn't just going to let some wannabe roam the streets and perhaps even ruin his reputation if not die. But so far he hadn't gained anything, just that he realized some cases in the police file that were said to have been solved by him were definitely not and were likely to be the doings of the new Bat. At an old apartment, Batman was now scouting out the place to see if he could find any clues leading to the identity of the new Bat. "Why are you following me?" Bats turned to face the Black Panther, who for some reason was still following him. "I want to find Clow, and you want to find this new Bat. I help you find them, the quicker we get to finding my guy." They both remained in silence, staring at one another, before the Bat turned away, ignoring him. Activating his scanners embedded in his helmet, he began to scan the place. Soon finding a piece of Kevlar behind some wreckage, he picked it up. A further scan revealed it was standard police issue used in making bulletproof vests for officers. At this point, there were some patterns he couldn't ignore, going after people based on police info and Kevlar meant for officers. It was time he paid old George a visit. Batman stood across the street watching George's home. "I don't see the reason we are stalking the police captain." T-Shaka spoke up, causing Bats to get annoyed. Handing over a drive to him, he spoke up, "This drive contains information on mob bosses who would probably be interested in said weapons." "You had this all this while?" "I told you I was busy." At that moment Bats caught sight of something from the corner of his eyes. A figure was making their way out of a window. With a closer look, it was none other than the new Bat. Batman had a smirk on his face as he followed after her, leaving the Black Panther on the roof. Gwen had snuck out after making sure everyone was asleep. Gwen was determined to find where those crazy weapons came from, and also she was curious as to who the other guy was, as well as the bald ladies who had knocked her out. Gwen was deep in her thoughts when the Batman suddenly appeared before her. "You're coming with me." Gwen's eyes opened wide in disbelief. She couldn't believe the Batman was right before her. Hello, Batman. Sir, I'm a big fan of yours and you inspired me to wear this and I'm gonna shut up now." "Who are you?" Batman's voice broke the awkward silence forming once more. "Oh yeah, I'm Ghost Bat. Yeah, Ghost Bat." Batman stared Gwen down before speaking up. "Go home, Gwen. The streets of New York are no place to fool around. The bat symbol on your chest is nothing but a target." After his words he turned to leave. Gwen stood stunned. How did he know her name? Never mind that. What did he mean? Was he saying she wasn't good enough? Gwen was extremely annoyed. She rushed at the Bat whose back was turned to her, but he avoided it at the right moment. "Don't look down on me." With that, the Batman had a small smirk on his face as Gwen continued rushing him with everything at her disposal. Batman kept blocking her attack while analyzing her movements, checking just how good she was. Gwen, realizing her attacks weren't working, released a batarang, which the Bat tilted his head to avoid before continuing to exchange blows when he ducked and rolled, avoiding the batarang, which had flown back into her arms as she got into a stance to keep up this battle that determined if she was good enough. Gwen charged once more with a kick aimed at the Bat's head, but the Bat grabbed her, pulling her close and landing a heavy hit on her abdomen, knocking the wind out of her. Gwen stumbled back, trying her best to catch her breath and stabilize herself, but the throbbing pain in her abdomen prevented her from doing so. At this point Batman began walking towards her without a care. She attempted to punch him but had her hand grabbed, followed by a quick jab to her underarm. Gwen was now down. She couldn't understand why. She had been hit before by the thugs she fought, but this was a whole new level of pain, as every punch felt like she was hit with a sledgehammer at full force, and she couldn't help but begin to wonder if the man behind that mask was truly human. "Go home. This life isn't for you." Batman left her with those words before disappearing. Batman might have seemed calm and all while fighting her, but truth be told, he was freaking out within. When he first arrived in this world, he thought of fighting those big threats, but as time went by, he had to admit he had begun to lose focus. He felt as though he was enough and that everything was under his control and so he could deal with everything, but now with Gwen's existence, he couldn't help but begin to think, was this truly the MCU he was familiar with? Oracle, scan for Peter Parker. Batman spoke up. Yes, sir. Peter Parker is currently a student at Midtown High and... Enough. What about Oscorp? With that, all information about Oscorp was brought before him. Search Oscorp files for research concerning spiders. Images were brought up, and with this Bats could speculate it wouldn't be long before Spider-Man was born, but where would Gwen factor into all of this? Oracle, how is our backdoor into Stark Industries? Still undiscovered, sir. Good, bring out info concerning the Jericho missile. More info was brought before his eyes, and now he could kind of tell that in 6 months to a year, Iron Man would begin and the MCU would officially be in full swing. Meaning he had to stop messing around and get his head back into the game. Some things he couldn't deal with, but some he could, and number one on his list now was Hydra. Making up his mind, Batman had decided when he was done with Clow, his next goal would be wiping out Hydra. Sebastian had appeared in a room where a group of people were seated around a round table. Why did you call this meeting, Chris? Captain, you see we as a group are truly grateful to you for bringing us all together. I mean, if not because of you, who knows where we would be after everything, but now you've grown weak and are acting more like a butler and less like our captain. Is this a coup? Sebastian asked with a chilly tone in his voice. Please don't refer to it as such. We both know pretty well that a coup normally ends with a former leader dead. No, think of this more as a change of leadership. Sebastian took a quick look at everyone seated around the table, only to see none were on his side. Sebastian debated pulling his gun out there and then, but he thought about it carefully. Most of the people here were taught by him, and so taking them out would not be an easy task. Everyone had fallen into an awkward silence. The awkward silence was broken by the door creaking as it was opened by someone. Sebastian turned to have a good look at the newcomer, who was in a sharp white shirt with a green tie. The man had a smile, which caused warning signals in Sebastian's mind to go off. Yes. Chris spoke up. Let me introduce you to our new member, Norman Osborn. Hello, nice to meet you. I look forward to working with you, Norman spoke as he stretched out his hand for a handshake, while Sebastian's eyes widened a bit at the mention of his name, remembering he was one of the people the young master was paying attention to. Gwen had returned home feeling down. She had wanted so long to meet and speak to the Batman to join him in his crusade against crime, but after finally getting the chance, she was beaten down and then rejected. As she stood thinking about what the Batman had told her, she heard footsteps heading towards her door. Moving her body to the door, she managed to block the door just in time, preventing the person from entering. Gwen, it is me. Let me in. George spoke up, but Gwen, who was still in her makeshift bat costume, spoke up. Dad, I'm a bit tired and want to go to bed early. Are you sure? George asked with his concern clear in his voice. Yeah, okay, call me if you need anything, George spoke up. Sure, Dad. She listened to his footsteps as he left before slumping down behind her door. T'Chaka had arrived at the location where Clow was suspected to be. Making his way through the vents, the Black Panther had sneaked his way into the building. Spotting men with guns making routine patrols, T'Chaka was sure he had come to the right place. Paying closer attention, he was able to deduce the guards were paying more attention to a door a bit further down the hallway, thinking to himself that Clow was probably behind that door. T'Chaka burst through the vents, taking the guards by surprise and taking out 4 of them before they could react. Wasting no time, Black Panther made a mad dash down the hallway with sparks flying as bullets bounced off his suit. The guards' eyes opened wide, seeing their bullets had no effect on the guy before them. At this point in time, the only thought running through their heads was just who the hell their boss had pissed off. T'Chaka barged into the office after making short work of the 2 guards. Before him sat Clow with a whiskey at hand. Clow. Ah, Your Majesty, what a surprise. I have to admit I wasn't expecting you. Clow spoke without a trace of worry in his voice. You are coming to Wakanda with me to pay for all your crimes. T'Chaka spoke with his rage clear in his voice. Oh, is that so? Well, before we leave, why don't you meet a friend of mine? T'Chaka narrowed his eyes in confusion, but before he could react, a metal tail came out of nowhere, sending him flying backwards. Batman was going to check on the Black Panther but arrived just in time to see the king being defenestrated. With a huge thud, the Black Panther had made a small crater and was struggling to get to his feet. Looking up at where he flew out from, the Batman saw someone he wasn't expecting to see. The figure jumped down, landing about 2 meters away from Batman. The figure was decked in a green exoskeleton with silver accents. The exoskeleton resembled some sort of scorpion, with its tail end having an opening that sort of resembled a cannon. "Hello," the figure spoke, their voice distorted by a voice modulator. "It's a pleasure to meet you. I hoped for it to be a bit later, but, oh well. You can call me Scorpion. Be careful, Batman. He is not easy to deal with." T'Chaka spoke up as he managed to regain his footing and re-entered a battle stance. Interesting, you can still stand. I'm truly curious just how much that suit of yours can take." With that, his tail began firing away. Both Batman and Black Panther managed to jump away in time, avoiding the attack. Bats released a few batarangs, but they were deflected by Scorpion using his tail. Scorpion pounced at Batman, having a near miss and smashing through a car. Black Panther, taking advantage of that brief opening, jumped to deliver a kick to Scorpion's head but was caught by his tail and smashed into the road. Batman, using his grappling hook, pulled the Black Panther out of the way just in time to avoid a blast from the Scorpion's tail. "Rushing in won't help us. We need to work together." The Scorpion didn't give them much time to regroup as he rushed at them almost instantly. Batman took to the skies as Black Panther dived away to avoid the attack. Batman dropped a few smoke bombs to obscure Scorpion's vision before dropping in to deliver a roundhouse kick with a few rapid punches. He was stunned, however, when he realized that his attacks had done nothing to the Mun before him, who was smiling down at him. With a backflip he escaped from the area enclosed by the smoke. "I take it you exchanged blows with him then?" T'Chaka came to his side and spoke up. "The exoskeleton he is wearing is probably made of adamantium." "Wait, what?" Black Panther was confused as to how he came to such a conclusion. "There are only a few metals on Earth that can stop my suit. The likelihood of it being adamantium is much higher than vibranium." Before Black Panther could question him further, energy beams came towards them, causing them to split up to avoid being hit. "Do you have a plan? Because I don't think this guy is planning on letting us go." Black Panther called out to Batman. "His tail is his main source of attack. Take it down to reduce his range of attack." T'Chaka's eyes widened as he heard the Batman's voice in his ear. Looking towards where the Batman was standing, almost 2 feet away, "Ow. I placed comms on your helmet, you draw his attention, and I'll deal with the tail." Black Panther was about to question him only to see him disappear into the shadows. Scorpion stepped out only to see Black Panther with no signs of Batman. Well, kitty cat, it seems it's just you and me." T'Chaka felt his rage build up. Hearing what Scorpion said and rushing at him, both men began trading blows in close quarters. Scorpion attempted to move back to gain some space so as to blast the Black Panther, but he was unrelenting, not giving even the slightest chance to Scorpion. Scorpion's mood had gone from relaxed to annoyed. At this moment the Batman had appeared behind him, locking his tail in place. Scorpion saw him and attempted to blast him away, not knowing he had fallen for Batman's trap. Blocking the opening, Batman quickly retreated. Seeing this, T'Chaka was quick to do so as well, while Scorpion's eyes widened in realization. Boom! There was an explosion, which took off Scorpion's tail and sent him straight into a building. Batman and Black Panther stood side by side sharing a look before looking at the hole in the wall. As they were about to head in, a blast landed right in front of them, with its resulting force sending them back. Through the smoke, Batman could make out Clow moving Scorpion into a van while another man stood for a moment staring at Batman before entering the van as well. The Dora Milaje arrived just as the van left. "My king!" The ladies rushed to help the Black Panther up as he let out a groan. "Ugh! I'm getting too old for this." Batman performed a kick-up, getting to his feet before looking towards them. "You shouldn't have gone in today. You should have waited for the trade." Batman spoke up. "If I didn't head in, we wouldn't know who Clow is working with. I got us information." "Who is supporting Clow then? Who made that exoskeleton? Who came to rescue them? Or let's do something simpler. What did they discuss today?" Batman had arrived a few inches away from T'Chaka, not the least bit worried about the spears pointed at him. Black Panther remained silent after hearing all the questions. At this point he had realized he was a bit rash in how he dealt with the situation. "Okay, maybe I was a bit rash, but we at least got the tale that should provide some answers." In an undisclosed lab, McDonald Gargan, aka the Scorpion, was seated, having his wounds tended to. "Do you know what you have done?" a voice questioned Gargan. "I didn't expect the Batman to appear." Gargan responded, gritting his teeth. "Well, he was there, and now you have lost a part of a $14 billion exosuit." The voice spoke with anger clear in their voice. "Sorry, sir. Sorry, it isn't fixing your mistake now, is it? Octavius, how far away are we from success?" "Shouldn't be long, Mr. Osborn." A scientist in a white lab suit spoke. "Good, now I'm going to deal with our bat problem." Norman Osborn spoke as he left the lab. The Batman had returned to the Batcave with the Black Panther at his side. After preliminary scans, Batman was even more worried. Even ignoring the fact that someone had obtained that much adamantium to make a combat suit, the amount of tech in the tail alone sent shivers down his spine. In all honesty, Batman hadn't been all that interested in Scorpion, just knowing him as one of Spidey's many villains. But he was sure of one thing: he definitely wasn't famous for his high IQ, meaning he didn't build this himself. Bats was leaning more to the idea that an organization was probably supporting him. "So what have you discovered?" T'Chaka spoke up, unable to stand still anymore. Batman took a look at him before projecting what he had discovered onto the screen. T'Chaka's eyes widened seeing the schematics, not expecting just this tale to be so advanced. Not that he hadn't seen anything as advanced. Heck, his daughter made stuff on this level every week. Ding! T'Chaka was brought out of his thoughts by a sound. Turning to the source, he saw a Mun decked in a suit with a white theater mask on. The figure walked briskly towards them with a tray at hand. Placing the tray on the table, he picked up the kettle, pouring tea into 2 cups before handing one to Batman as well as the Black Panther. "Thank you, Agentess." Batman spoke up as he took a sip from his cup. "It's a pleasure, sir," the maskman spoke, his voice distorted by a voice modulator, before turning around to leave. T'Chaka only regained his bearings when the figure was gone. Who was that? A friend was all he got from the Batman before he turned his attention back to the tale. After a few more minutes of silence, he spoke up once more. "Oracle, scan for who obtained such large amounts of adamantium in the past year. Check both legal and illegal channels." At an office in an undisclosed location, 4 men stood with their heads down. They were bruised all over with bloodstains on their clothes. Before them a Mun smashed his fist on his mahogany desk, seething with anger. The Mun was none other than Chris, who had overthrown Sebastian recently. How dare he? How dare that bastard? Chris's men had just reported to him that one of his warehouses had been raided before being burnt to the ground. What pissed him off even more was the fact that his men reported they saw a bat-like figure at the scene. At this point Chris could tell who it was, for there was no person in this city who didn't know him, the Batman. Taking in a deep breath, he picked up his phone. "Call a meeting." At this moment Batman, who was still trying to find the manufacturer of the Scorpion exosuit, had no idea he had been framed and now had a new enemy. In a classified location. "What is it, Hill?" said a bald man in all black with a black trench coat wearing a black eye patch over his left eye. "Sir, you have to look at this." Saying so, the lady who had called out to him and pulled up a video of Batman and the Black Panther going up against Scorpion. The bald man kept quiet as he watched the video, thinking back on the time when he first met the Batman. After that, he then thought back to the recent discussion he had with the world leaders. "Hill." "Yes, sir." "You're heading to New York. Your mission is to have the Batman join the Avengers Initiative." His words caused Hill to be stunned for a brief moment. "With all due respect, sir, we don't even know who he is. How am I supposed to find him?" "That's your problem, Hill, your problem." With a smirk, Nick Fury turned to walk away. George was getting a headache. It hadn't been long since he came captain, yet he had to deal with an assassination attempt and a new guy in a mask running round the city with Batman, and apparently they were fighting a Scorpion person. George let out a sigh. The world was just becoming way too crazy, A/N. If only you knew, Georgie. To make matters worse, the higher-ups were asking for answers he did not have. And so that was why he was up here on the roof waiting to meet with his old friend the Batman. "Captain," the familiar cold voice sounded behind him, causing George to turn around, coming face to face with the Bat. "You know you have caused a lot of problems for me. I thought you were the sneak-around type, not the make holes in the middle of the street type. There were certain complications, was all the bat said. What's going on? George asked, feeling really worried. If Batman considered something a problem, it definitely wasn't a small matter. Scorpion's suit. Batman stated. Scorpion. George asked with his brow raised, showing his confusion. The person I and the Black Panther fought. Scorpion, Batman, Black Panther. Who comes up with these names? What's next? Huh? A Spider-Man. Batman remained silent at that, which caused George to open his mouth in disbelief. Wait, don't tell me there is actually a Spider-Man. Batman ignored his question and continued, was made solely out of adamantium, a rare and extremely powerful metal. I have a list of names of people who might be behind him, and I already have some of my people investigating some of them. I need you to investigate the others. Finished. Batman handed him a folder. Looking through the folder, George raised his head. How did you get? Only to see he was alone. I hate it when he does that, George muttered to himself as he left. In a familiar room where a group of people were seated with serious, grim expressions on their faces. Sebastian was seated amongst these men with a similar expression on his face, but unlike the others, he had a tinge of suspicion in his eyes. Chris, seeing everyone was present, spoke up, "Everyone, I know each of you is wondering why I had called for this meeting all of a sudden," his words causing the members who were whispering amongst themselves to stop and pay full attention to him. We have a problem. This board was founded so as to keep order by controlling the city's underbelly. For a few years now we have ignored an uncontrollable factor, the Batman. Chris's words caused alarm bells to ring in Sebastian's ears. This masked vigilante has been parading around the city for a long time. We have ignored him mainly due to the fact his activities have had no impact on us, but that changed. Chris slammed his fist on the table before continuing. The bastard raided one of my factories today and then had the guts to blow it up. Sebastian's eyes widened at those words. At this moment there was no doubt in his mind Jeffrey was in trouble, big trouble. I think it's time we dealt with this uncontrollable factor. At this point, all around the table, all the members had broken into murmurs. All in favor, Chris spoke up once more. Sebastian watched as the room became deadly silent, with the members seated around the table sharing looks with one another. In a few moments the first hand went up, with all others following soon after. Sebastian remained seated, watching the whole thing in horror while keeping a calm outward appearance. The court has decided, from now on the Batman is our enemy. If I may, Norman Osborn spoke up, drawing all eyes on himself. I think I have a way to deal with our rodent problem. The smile on his face caused Sebastian to feel a minor shiver down his spine and be completely unaware of Eve, who had her eyes trained on him. Batman had arrived at a warehouse. One of the trails had led him here. Sneaking through the air vents, Batman made his way into the warehouse. The warehouse was bare, but the scowl on Batman's face got deeper. An empty warehouse without anything should be abandoned, but not a single cobweb in it, and it was too clean to be abandoned. Batman spoke up, "Oracle, scan the warehouse." Taking a closer look, Batman realized there was another floor hidden down below. Now Batman was sure he found what he was looking for. Making his way to a side of the wall, he began feeling around till he found a groove. Pushing down on it, the wall moved aside to reveal a hidden elevator with a palm scanner. Oracle. Batman began. "Already done, sir." A ding sound followed as the door to the elevator opened, and he stepped in the elevator as it started moving down. The doors opened again, revealing a laboratory. Making his way through, Batman had an odd feeling someone was watching. Batman jerked his head to one side, hearing a noise but saw nothing. Moving closer to the sound, he came in contact with glass shards as well as some unknown substance. Bringing out a pick, he picked at it, discovering the substance was a viscous one. Batman paused, hearing faint growling sounds as he rolled away in time to avoid the attack. In another place, Norman Osborn, as well as other members of the court, was watching the entire scene on screen. Norman had managed to manipulate one of his doctors into taking one of their attempts at recreating the super serum. Although it was a failure, he and the other viewers were pleasantly surprised, and Osborn was sure he could obtain more funding. Thinking so, a smile made its way to his face. Eve had pulled Sebastian away from the rest. "What is it, Eve?" Sebastian asked her. "I know," was all she said. You know what? Sebastian got more confused as the conversation continued. I know your secret, Eve whispered in his ear. Sebastian's eyes widened for a moment, but he kept his cool. I don't know what you're talking about. Eve revealed a charming grin as she heard his words. Oh, Sebastian, my sweet, sweet Sebastian. Do you think I'm that dumb, or did you forget my field of expertise? I mean, you started all this a month after the young Jeffrey King disappeared. You then began distancing yourself when he returned. A month later, rumors of the Batman began, with you starting to ask for information relating to the Mandarin, who the Batman later tangled with. Sebastian's eyes slowly began to widen as she continued. And also the young billionaire rarely appears with the news claiming he is a playboy and is always off with a lady. You know what I find funny? I know billionaire playboys. I mean, check the paper. Stark is the best example, but not once have the ladies your young master has been with been mentioned. I know for a fact there are no ladies. So why don't we stop the lies, shall we? Jeffrey King is the Batman. Back at the lab, Batman was face to face with a 6 feet 8 inches, green-scaled, red-eyed monstrosity. With a look, Batman knew that the creature before him was none other than the lizard. He said in his head. He could understand George. Spider-Man, Scorpion, Rhino, Lizard, and now Batman. Batman was snapped out of his thoughts by a massive tail that came swinging at him. The streets were buzzing with people enjoying the cool air of the night and the occasional honks from the cabs on the streets. This scene was soon broken by Batman flying out of the ground, followed by a giant green lizard. The people were stunned for a moment, but a scream woke everyone up as they began screaming whilst running for their lives. Bat's back had slammed into a cab. Sitting up, the sight of the lizard releasing a roar came into his sights. The lizard's amber eyes locked onto him and pounced at him, missing as Batman rolled away. Angry, he rushed at Batman once more, swiping at him, but Bats nimbly moved around him, jumping on his back and grabbing at his neck as the lizard tried to shake him. The lizard rampaged as he tried to shake him off, destroying some cars and parts of the street in the process. Roar. He let out another roar but was silenced by Batman placing tear gas in the lizard's mouth, causing him to choke and tears to appear in his eyes. Taking advantage of his predicament, Batman rushed in, delivering a few hits, but just as he was about to land another hit on the lizard's jaw, a green flash appeared in the corner of his eye before he was sent into a post by the lizard's tail. The members of the court broke into cheers as they saw that scene. Norman, with his glass at hand, had a wide grin on his face. He knew when this was done, he would have lots of people lining up to buy his serum. The lizard rushed at Batman, ready to take a bite of him, but got a mouthful of metal as Batman used the broken post. Before he could get used to the pain in his mouth, he felt something around his neck. Batman wrapped his grappling hook around the lizard and then threw him into a cab across the street, causing an explosion. The members of the court watching became silent instantly. Norman crushed the glass in his hands with his eyes frosty. Some of the other members had their eyes wide open. They could not believe the sight before their eyes, how the Batman made what he did look so effortless. At that moment a terrifying thought appeared in their minds. Was the Batman truly human, or was he, like the rumors say, a demon? With that thought, shivers went down their spines. Batman walked to the lizard with steady steps. A claw quickly came at him, but moving to the side he dodged it and put a batarang in his hand. The lizard let out a roar of pain, but that was merely the beginning of its nightmare. Batman became like a shadow, sticking to him, landing hit after hit and leaving wounds with his batarangs. The lizard tried to resist, but was unable to land a single hit. Batman appeared before him, causing him to let out a roar of rage and be about to charge at him, but a beeping sound caused him to come to a halt. Beep. 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 Boom. Erg. The lizard let out a scream of pain as his right hand was blown up. At that moment the Batman appeared in his sight once more, walking to him steadily. At this point every cell in his body was screaming for him to get away from the demon before him. Wasting no time, he made a mad dash and escaped through the sewers. Batman watched him escape before looking up at a space not far from him. At this point the members of the court broke out in a cold sweat as the Batman was staring right at them, which shocked them, as they were positive their drone was impossible to be discovered, but here they were with the Batman staring right at them. Wasting no time, they withdrew the drone. Batman felt himself being watched but was busy dealing with the lizard, but now he had time. They were quick to escape. At the Batcave, Batman had arrived and moved straight to his computer to locate the tracker he slipped on the lizard. "Sir, we need to talk." Sebastian walked in at this moment. Not now, Sebastian. I need to track down the lizard. This is about the lizard. Batman came to a halt and turned to look at Sebastian. Not long after your parents died and you left, I began an organization. Calling on old friends of mine, I founded the court. The aim of the court was to reduce crime by controlling the underworld of the city, but like a wise man once said, proximity to power corrupts. Batman interrupted. What are you getting at? The court considers you an uncontrollable factor and now wants to eliminate you. Sebastian, don't tell me your court sent the lizard after me, Batman spoke, his tone slowly turning cold. The court did, but... No. Batman stopped Sebastian. No buts, I trusted you. You are the only family I have left in this world. How could you? You lied to me for years. You watched me put on this suit and go out there, day after day, fighting for this city, and you said nothing. Jeffrey. No, I don't want to speak to you right now. With those words, Batman walked out of the Batcave. It had been a whole week since the whole lizard fiasco. Batman's tracker led him to a dead end, as Lizard at some point in time had gotten rid of the tracker. Batman figured if there was some sort of secret society behind this, its members would be a part of the elite in society, and that is why he was here as Jeffrey King hosting this party. Hey Jeff, are you still with us? Tony's voice brought Jeffrey out of his thoughts. Yeah, Jeffrey flashed a smile at Tony. You've been kind of off tonight. Tony pressed on, just some stuff that isn't important. What about the word on the street that you are up to something big? Indeed I am, Jeff, indeed I am. I have something that I'll be showing off real soon, and trust me when I say it's gonna blow your mind. Tony spoke as he gulped down another glass. Hey Tony, ever think of moving out of the weapon industry? Jeff asked suddenly, now why would I do that? Aren't you worried one day your missile is gonna blow up in your face? Jeff spoke as he thought about the event that led to Tony becoming Iron Man. You know what I always say, make your friends and your enemies rich and wait to see which is which. Tony spoke while putting his arms on Jeff's shoulder, but his eyes soon saw a lady in the crowd. Excuse me, Jeff, duty calls. Jeff scoffed at that, watching Tony leave before moving to the bar to get another drink, looking around for any suspicious people. This would be easier with Sebastian. The thought popped in his head for a moment before he shook it off. You don't look like the host of a party, a voice came from behind him. Turning to face the voice, he spoke up, pardon. Behind him was a lady in a close-fitting blue dress with blue eyes as well as brown hair tied into a bun. I mean, for the host of the party, one would think you'd be more like that guy. Saying so, she pointed into the crowd. Following her line of sight, he saw Tony. Tony has always been the life of the party. I don't believe we've met. Jeff spoke as he motioned for her to sit by him. Susan Andrews. She stretched her hand out as she introduced herself. Jeffrey King. Jeff spoke as he took her hand. Yes, I don't think there is anyone in this city who doesn't know you. Jeff just smiled at that while getting her a cocktail. So Susan, what brings you to this part of New York? Sightseeing, she traced her finger round the mouth of her glass. Sightseeing? Well, there isn't much to see around here. I'm not here for what, per se, but more for who. She sipped on her cocktail. You have my attention, Jeff spoke, looking in her eyes. I'm looking for the Batman. The Batman? Yes, I've heard a lot about him and really want to meet him. What about you? Have you had the chance to meet the legendary Bat? No, I have not. His watch began beeping at that moment. Sorry, I have to go. Susan slipped a card to him before he left. Call me. Jeff, after entering a hallway, looked down at the card. She thought she hid well but had no idea he knew who she was, Maria Hill. Nick Fury sending her here, as well as her hinting at the Batman, proves he is searching for the Batman's identity, probably to have an upper hand when he decides to call on him or something of the sort. Getting to a place where no one was present, he picked up his phone. Detective. Batman, I followed the lead you gave me and got something. What? The lead leads to Norman Osborn. We're outside his building right now about to head in, but we've been stopped by Scorpion and some other. Oh my God. Jeff heard a boom. Turning around, looking through the mirror, he could see smoke rising from Oscorp as well as hear the sirens, which were all heading there. Jeff made a mad dash down to the underground garage. As he opened the door, a car parked before him with the back door opening. A quick look at the front, Jeff saw Sebastian before the wheel. Without any hesitation, he got in. "Press the button before you," Sebastian spoke up. Doing so, his suit came from behind and above him, suiting him up. "I know I was wrong to hide what I did for 27 years. A/N. Because a lot of you ask, Jeff becomes Batman when he is 20. The Captain Marvel event happens when he is 25, and at this point in time he is 37. The year being 2007, and Iron Man happens in 2008. You're welcome, but no matter what, we're family. And family sticks together no matter what." Jeff finished now in his batsuit. Sebastian had a smile on his face. "I took the liberty to inform Master T'Chaka to meet you." "Thank you, Sebastian. Also, please press the button by you, sir. I left a little surprise." Batman looked at it for a moment before pressing it. Where he was seated detached from the car and transformed into a bike. "I call it the Batsicle." Sebastian's voice resounded in his ear, and a smirk appeared on his face as he sped off. Cough. Cough. George made it to his feet coughing, looking at the damage around him, with most of his men injured, with some even dead. George was filled with unbridled rage as he stared at the two figures before him. Before him stood Scorpion in his exosuit, with a Mun he could not recognize standing by his side. The most striking feature of the Mun was the fact he had but one hand and an unrecognized but scary weapon at hand. The Mun locked eyes with George, seeing the unbridled rage in his eyes. His face gained a sadistic look in his eye and aimed his weapon at George. "Bye-bye, Captain," the Mun said as he loaded his weapon, about to fire. The weapon, though, was sent out of his hand by the Black Panther, Chaka. "Clow. Today you will face Wakandan justice," he shouted as he charged at Clow. The Dora Milaje followed closely behind, holding the Scorpion off and allowing their king to fight Clow unimpeded. George watched all this stunned. Scorpion, on the other hand, was annoyed as he fought the Dora Milaje. "Get the hell out of my way," he shouted as he swiped his tail at them, sending some of them flying. A member of the Dora Milaje saw an opening and, taking advantage, managed to put the Scorpion into a headlock with her spear as the others joined her. On the other hand, with the Black Panther and Clow, the battle was fierce, as both of them were old enemies and, after many battles, had gained a basic understanding of each other's fighting capabilities. Black Panther was trying his best to keep the fight as one of close combat with his claws out, swiping at Clow with all intention to end his life, leaving bloody claw marks on him in the process. Clow wasn't having it, though, releasing a well-timed blast from his arm cannon, sending Chaka flying back. "I was just about getting tired of you myself." Saying so, Clow continued to fire at T'Chaka, who showed off his cat-like agility as he avoided the attacks. The battle continued, soon reaching a standstill as they continued to exchange blows, but this standstill was soon broken by a savage roar. The attention was drawn to the source of the roar, where a huge green figure appeared. It was none other than the Lizard. Scorpion and Clow had smiles on their faces, knowing they now had backup. Meanwhile, T'Chaka and the others became worried seeing this new guy entering the field. George couldn't help but curse, "What the hell?" when he saw the creature looking straight at them. The Lizard let out another roar before charging at them, heading straight for George, who emptied his entire clip to no avail. His eyes widened in fear as the beast was but a meter away. At this moment the revving of a bike was heard, and soon the sight of Batman riding through the flames was imprinted in their eyes. Batman jumped off his bike as it went straight into the Lizard, sending him tumbling to the ground. Batman arrived at George's side. "Captain. Batman, am I glad to see you. You need to get out of here. Gather all your men who can move and move the ones who can't out of here." Batman left those words as he rushed at the Lizard, who was now on his feet once more. The Lizard, seeing him, let out a roar before smashing its tail towards Batman. In the highest office in the Oscorp building, Norman watched everything that went on below, getting more annoyed with each passing moment. At that moment a Mun rushed into the office, drawing his attention. "Sir. Is it done?" Norman asked immediately when he saw the Mun. "Yes, sir. Your son has been moved outside the country." "Good, leave me for a moment." Norman watched the Mun leave before moving to his desk and activating his PC. On his screen was none other than Alexander Pierce. "We had a deal. Norman screamed immediately he saw the Mun. I think you are misunderstanding. Our deal was you provide us with a super soldier serum and you receive your pay. Nowhere in our agreement did it mention us protecting you. Damn you. Do you think you'll get anything if I'm dead? Norman was furious hearing what they said. Alexander had a smirk as he heard that. You underestimate Hydra. Norman, we already have all your files and we will be able to continue from where you left off. Goodbye, Norman. Arg. Norman amassed the computer as he heard that. Damn you, Hydra. He took in a few breaths before muttering, this isn't over. Daniel. Norman shouted for the Mun who had just left the office and he came rushing back in. Yes, sir. Clean this up. Norman walked past him after saying that, getting into the elevator. He took his phone and dialed a number. Alexei, if anyone enters the building, kill them. Saying so he hung up and dialed another number but soon smashed his phone, screaming, Octavius. Otto had refused to answer his calls and Norman was certain he was abandoned. Stepping out of the elevator, Norman was filled with rage, seeing as he had been abandoned. Norman stepped into a lab where the few remaining people in the lab were taking all important things to carry out of the place. Mr. Osborne, sir, the leader called out and moved to Norman immediately he saw him. Where is it? Sir. The Mun looked at Norman, confused. Norman, wasting no time, grabbed him by his collar. Where is the serum? Outside, Oscorp, Batman and Lizard had traded a few blows, with Batman coming out on top. Batman stood upon the wreckage of a car watching the Lizard, who was once again on his feet with rage clear in his eyes as he roared and rushed towards Batman. At this point Batman performed a flip over him and injected a substance into his neck. The Lizard felt as though something had pricked him but soon felt an unbearable amount of pain before reverting back to his human form. The scene stunned all at the scene. Batman was quick to hand the doc to one of the Dora Milaje. Get him out of here. She hesitated for a moment before rushing away with a naked Doc over her shoulder. I'm heading in, Batman shouted as he rushed straight into the Oscorp building. Don't worry, we will hold them off and join you soon. T-Shaka shouted back as he landed a hit on Klau's jaw. Batman took a quick look around as he rushed into Oscorp, seeing everyone had been evacuated, leaving only the Black Panther and the Dora Milaje fighting Scorpion and Klau. Unknown to the Batman, George had returned and managed to make his way into the Oscorp building. The sounds of the alarm were blaring through the hallway as George made his way with his gun at hand. He had yet to see anyone, but the blaring sound of alarm and the lights that were flickering on and off, probably due to the explosion, caused him to tense up. George had taken a few turns and still hadn't seen anyone about to take the steps to move to the next floor when he began to feel minor tremors. Soon a faint thumping sound could be heard. The sound grew louder as it got closer. George slowly turned around, his eyes widening when he saw what was rushing towards him. A hulking mass of gray with a horn on its head heading right for him. George began to fire at the figure but his bullets just bounced off right before the figure smashed into him. A black shadow came from behind him and landed a hit, sending the gray, hulking mass tumbling back. The black shadow stood turning to face George, revealing himself to be none other than the Batman Run. George nodded frantically and ran up the stairs while swearing to himself that he was going to bring Norman in today by all means. The hulking mass stood, allowing Batman to see who it was. It was none other than Alexei Mihailovich Sitsovic, Alex O'Hearn, aka the Rhino. You're going to pay for that. I'm gonna smash you like a bug, you costumed freak. Rhino screamed as he rushed at the Batman, causing Bats to raise an eyebrow at the irony. Using the wall as a springboard, Batman jumped onto his back and left a batarang before jumping away as it exploded. The Rhino turned to face Batman relatively unharmed but extremely pissed off. Batman watched as the Rhino turned to face him and tapped the bat symbol on his chest. Good thing I had this installed, didn't think I'd use it so soon, Batman thought to himself as his gloves gave off a faint blue glow. He rushed to meet Rhino, who was rushing at him and landed a hit on his jaw with the gloves, which sent Rhino flying into a wall. Rhino crawled out of the wall with a look of surprise on his face as he stared at the gloves on Batman's hand. Rhino and Batman stood in place, both waiting for the other to make the first move. Batman was studying the Rhino, waiting for his attack. The Rhino, on the other hand, was staring at the gloves on Batman's hands with a trace of fear. Rhino couldn't remember the last time he felt that much pain since he gained the suit. Batman, done waiting for him to charge, dropped smoke bombs, covering the entire hallway with smoke and vanishing within the smoke. In the lab, "Sir, I really think this is a bad idea. We have yet to perform any tests. We have no idea." Norman cut him off by grabbing him by the neck. "Did I ask for your opinion?" "No, sir." The man barely managed to spit out, "Then shut up." Norman dropped him before walking into the chamber. Norman had ditched his suit and was now in a tight-fitting black bodysuit. The people around stood still, watching him with nervous eyes. "What are you all waiting for? Activate it!" Norman screamed at the scientists, who just stood there like statues. Two scientists turned to look at one another, moved to the console and began to activate the device. The door closed, some vents in the chamber closed and a green gas came through the tubes. The scientists all watched quietly as the gas quickly filled the chamber, but soon this silence was broken by screams of pain. The screams caused all present to take a step back. The screams lasted for a whole minute before coming to an abrupt halt. The scientists were curious as to what was going on. One of the braver scientists took a few steps forward, coming to the chamber. Leaning forward, he tried to peer through the green gas when a palm slammed against the glass. The abrupt action caused him to fall on his bum. The sound of laughter was heard through the lab. The eerie laughter sent chills through the backs of all present. The scientist before the chamber slowly crawled away from the chamber as he stared at the palm, which had turned a dark green. His heart tightened hearing the eerie laughter that seemed to scream insane. Thud. A fist smashed into the chamber, leaving a crack on the tempered glass. This was the last straw, as the people began to run out, leaving almost everything behind. No one wanted to wait for whatever demon to come out of that chamber. George finally arrived at the floor with the lab only to see countless people in white lab coats running out of a lab. Each and every one of them had a look of terror on his face as though the most horrifying existence was behind them. George raised his gun to eye level, moving his finger to the trigger, ready for whatever he would find. He moved into the lab, with the thing drawing his attention being the chamber in the center of the lab, which had a huge hole in front of it with green gas coming out of it. What the hell? George muttered to himself when he saw the sight, thinking back to the things he saw recently: Scorpion, the lizard, and the hulking gray creature he encountered on the lower floors. His mind couldn't help but think, what mad experiment was Osborn up to? An eerie laughter broke his train of thought. "Who is there? Show yourself. This is the police." George spoke as he began to make his way into the lab, but the lingering green gas hindered his vision. As George got deeper into the lab, he had a weird feeling as though someone was watching him. Turning around, his heart began to beat faster when he found nothing. He turned his head to the side to come face to face with a green creature with bright amber eyes that had a maniacal grin on its face right before it slammed into him. On the lower floor, Rhino lay unconscious beneath Batman's feet. Batman, standing above, had a few injuries, with a trail of blood flowing from the corner of his mouth and a few holes in his cape. His suit had been ripped in a few places, showing some parts of his places. Batman touched some of his injuries, thinking back to the fight with Rhino. Rhino, he truly deserves to be Spider-Man's physical strongest villain. The damage to the environment surrounding served as the witness to the battle that had just taken place. At this point the scientist had arrived at the floor and came to a screeching halt when they laid their eyes on the Batman with his foot on the Rhino's head. Some pissed their pants at the scene. Ignoring the looks on their faces, Batman thought back to them running here as if they were escaping from something, and his eyes widened as he muttered George, rushing to his aid. Outside the Oscorp building, Black Panther had defeated Clow but was now face to face with the Scorpion, who had managed to defeat the Dora Milaje, who lay on the ground battered and bruised. Black Panther, seeing his people lying on the ground, was pissed and let out a roar as he charged for the Scorpion. The Scorpion, whose suit was scratched and damaged in a few places by Dora Milaje, didn't hesitate to fire a few blasts at him. A blast hit him right in the face, sending the Black Panther flying back into a car. "The Bat isn't here to save you this time, kitty," Scorpion mocked as he picked up a car. "You're going to pay for what you did to my suit the last time." Scorpion roared as he smashed the car at the Black Panther, who stopped it at the last moment. T-Shaka let out a grunt as he struggled against the car being pressed against him. Ugh. T-Shaka struggled before lifting the car away to provide barely enough space for him to roll away. Relying on his agility, he flipped behind Scorpion, grabbed a car door and smashed it on Scorpion's head, sending him face first into the trunk of the car he was holding. Scorpion raised his head just to have Black Panther claw away at his helmet, making it through to leave a deep cut on Scorpion's face, causing him to scream out in agony before throwing T'Chaka off him. Taking off his helmet, Scorpion took a look at his face. Seeing the scar on his face, his anger was through the roof. Turning to face T'Chaka, who had now made it to his feet, he screamed, "I'm going to kill you." In the Oscorp building, Batman had arrived at the lab to see the empty chamber, but the green smoke had long faded from the lab. Batman began to search the lab for George and soon came to a table where a black liquid was in some sort of container and seemed to move on its own. Batman picked it up to have a closer look, but soon heard a sound and moved to the source of the sound. Batman came face to face with George being held by the throat by a green creature wearing some sort of battle armor standing on a glider with a mad grin on its face cackling. Seeing him, the creature flew out the window and to the roof. Batman didn't hesitate as he jumped out the window and fired a grappling hook towards the roof and pulled himself up. We meet at last. Batman, you may call me the Green Goblin. The Green Goblin cackled as he spoke. Batman watched this with apprehension. The Green Goblin was definitely a famous character in the Marvel Universe, one who was not known for his sanity. Batman was hoping that Norman would remain Norman in this universe, but luck didn't seem to be on his side, as Norman had transformed himself into the Goblin. Let him go. Batman ordered for George to be let free. Green Goblin came to a halt when he heard that, before a weird grin appeared on his face. As you wish. Arg! The screams of George sounded as he fell 108 floors. Batman jumped without hesitation so as to save his friend, with the Green Goblin laughing as he watched. Batman fired his grappling hook toward the roof with one arm and stretched out his other hand towards George. Batman was inches away from George but couldn't close the distance as they grew closer to the ground below. Come on. Come on. Batman kept thinking. Asterisk smash. A deafening sound cut his thoughts. At the Stacy home, a crashing sound was heard, causing Gwen to rush to the kitchen. In the kitchen, 2 pieces of a broken plate were on the ground with Gwen's mom clenching her chest with red eyes, feeling something had happened. Outside the Oscorp building, Black Panther, who had just defeated the Scorpion, saw something crash into a car and moved to check it out. Arriving there, a sad scene was before his eyes. Batman was by a body with his head bowed. A closer look at the body revealed the identity was none other than George Stacy, captain of the NYPD. Batman stood and Black Panther, who was close to him, felt as though his whole body had been dropped in freezing water. At that moment the man before him did not feel human but rather like some sort of demon that just escaped hell. Are you okay? Black Panther struggled before finally asking his question, I'm going to kill him. What? Batman's words caught Black Panther off guard, but before he could say or do anything, Batman was off. Green Goblin stood on his glider watching Batman come after him. Ah, seems you couldn't make it, ha. The Green Goblin's mad laughter drove Batman mad as he chased him through the skies, swinging to keep up. Oi, Batman. Catch. Green Goblin threw spherical objects with a blinking green light. Bat stopped swinging and avoided them by gliding away, causing the objects to miss him and fall further below and explode when coming in contact with the buildings below. Oops, well, I did say catch. Goblin spoke right before falling on a roof as Batman fired a batarang at his glider and knocked him off. Ouch. Goblin struggled to his feet just to come face to face with Batman's fist, which sent him back down and rolling. Batman rushed him, not letting up, and stabbed at him with a batarang. Goblin caught it right before it could stab into his face and flipped Batman off of him. Batman, are you pissed? Ha ha ha, don't be, because I'm just getting started. Batman tackled him, but the Goblin sent a knee into his ribs, which caused a sickening crunch and knocked the wind out of his lungs. That sounded like it hurt, Goblin spoke to Batman, who let out a grunt before taking a swing at the Goblin's jaw. Goblin took a few steps back before looking at Batman, who stared at him with a glare that scared him back into his sanity for a minute. A smile returned to his face once more as his glider came from behind with 2 machine guns coming out and firing at the Batman, causing him to jump off the building. Below, Black Panther and members of the Dora Mileage, who had managed to regain consciousness, were helping the people who managed to survive the rain of bombs. T'Chaka looked up just in time to see Batman sent into a building. I'm leaving this place to you, he shouted as leaped onto a car and used it as a springboard to soar into the sky. Green Goblin was just about to fly into the building to continue his assault on Batman when he looked below, in time to see Black Panther grab onto his glider and flip on it to engage in hand-to-hand combat with him. The two engaged in a fierce battle as the glider flew crazily through the city. Batman had managed to jump out of the building and fired a grappling hook at the glider, hanging on as he followed behind them. Green Goblin caught sight of him and pressed a button, causing his glider to rain bombs indiscriminately. Boom! Boom! The sound of explosions closely followed by sirens could be heard throughout, with trails of smoke heading into the night sky. Damn it! Batman exclaimed as a bomb headed straight for his face. Firing a batarang at it, he managed to blow it up before it got to him, but the resulting explosion still managed to get to him, burning off half of his mask. Goblin finally managed to kick Black Panther off his glider, sending him straight down. Haha! Goblin's laugh was cut off as he was tackled from behind and off the glider, through a building. Both the Batman and the Green Goblin struggled, grunting in pain, before they finally managed to make it to their feet. The Goblin now had a wound on his chin, probably caused by a shard of glass as they crashed into the building. Both men entered a battle stance and charged at one another. The Goblin came with a wide swing, but Batman avoided it and landed an uppercut before drop-kicking the Goblin into a pillar. Goblin stood up relatively unharmed, laughing like a madman, as he stared the Batman down. Ha ha ha, do you really think you can harm me, Batman? You took everything away from me. Without you, everything would have gone smoothly. The Goblin screamed as he threw a concrete slab at Bats. Batman jumped over it, activating his gloves once more. He landed a strong right hook on the Goblin's jaw, causing him to spit out a mouthful of green blood as he flew away. Goblin stood holding his jaw. Arg! Green Goblin screamed as he punched at Batman. The Goblin's fist colliding with the Batman's. The resulting force directly shattered the glove and sent Batman flying through the wall. You know, I've always thought you were better, that somehow you were like Captain America. Goblin started walking towards Batman at a leisurely pace. But now I see it, you are nothing more than a mun in a Halloween costume. Batman stood once again. Wrong, I'm Batman. With that, smoke appeared from all around, confusing Green Goblin as Batman disappeared into the smoke. Green Goblin began looking around frantically for the Batman, but to no avail, getting more frantic each second. A batarang came from behind, hitting Green Goblin in the back of his head. As he tried to regain his bearing, another one came, attaching itself to him and releasing a powerful jolt of electricity, causing him to scream out in pain. An explosive came out, shutting him up and sending him through a pillar. At this point, Green Goblin was on all fours with his fear reaching a never-before high. Green Goblin looked around him vigilantly for any signs of the Batman, when Batman dropped from above, sending his face into the floor and creating web-like cracks on the ground. Goblin rose his head, spitting out the cement, and began looking around once again for the Batman. Stop hiding like a coward and face me like a mun. Coward! Goblin punched before himself, only for his punch to be caught. The smoke cleared to reveal the Batman, who towered over him and had a firm grip on his fist. Goblin's eyes widened, and before he could react, Batman pulled him close and headbutted him, stunning him for a bit. Batman, not letting up, continued with a relentless assault, sending a knee straight to his head before continuing to vent his anger on the Goblin, smashing his right arm into a bloodied mess. After a full-on assault, he pulled the Goblin by the back of his neck and spoke but one word, "Why?" Goblin just stared at him through the eyes which had swollen up, ha, and began laughing like the madman he was. At this point, Batman heard a faint sound and moved as a glider made contact with the building and exploded. The entire building was sent down by the massive explosion, causing all to move away from the collapsing building, including Black Panther, who was just about to make his way into the building. A huge cloud of dust formed as the building collapsed, obscuring all forms of vision. As the dust cloud disappeared, Black Panther rushed in, calling for the Batman. Black Panther rushed into the scene, soon spotting the Green Goblin's corpse, which had a wide grin etched on his face. Black Panther took a quick glance, still looking for the Batman, when he saw a massive concrete slab moving and came to a halt. The concrete slab was pushed away to reveal the Batman, whose suit was all but destroyed but who still stood strong. Choppers soon crowded the scene, shining their light down on the wreckage below. The city is still in shock after the explosive events that happened yesternight as Batman, with another unknown individual, fought against Norman Osborn, now known as the Green Goblin, and caused massive destruction across the city. What did I tell you about idolizing these masked vigilantes? Now look. Look what they did to our city. A cop is dead for crying out loud. Jameson's voice was cut off as Sebastian turned off the TV. Are you all right, sir? Sebastian asked as he turned to Jeff, who was before his work table, with Jeff remaining silent. In the Stacy home, Helen was on the couch hugging a picture of George tightly as she bawled her eyes out. Gwen tried her best to comfort her mother, with even the boys remaining silent with somber looks on their faces. A whole week had passed since the Goblin incident. The city was in mourning for the countless people who died that night, with Jeff at a funeral himself. Jeff was dressed in all black in a sharp Armani suit, standing amongst the other guests. He watched as they placed George's coffin into the pit and began shoveling dirt on it. Helen held on to the folded flag, bawling her eyes out with her children by her side. Jeff watched this feeling guilty. He couldn't help but think back to that night. If only he hadn't handed that file over to George, if he had taken care of the rhino a bit earlier, or if he had just been able to grab George during the fall. Jeff just couldn't help but wonder, what if? Unfortunately, there are no what-ifs in this world, and all he could do at this moment was say goodbye to his friend. At Eve's club, Sebastian was having a meeting with Eve. He hadn't forgotten that she had found out the identity of the Batman and could share that information with the court whenever she wished. Sebastian, a pleasure as always. She began pouring 2 glasses and spoke once more as she did so. I know why you are here, and no, I haven't told them and I don't plan to. Sebastian raised a brow at her words. What are you up to? Sebastian questioned her as she turned around and handed a drink to him. Sebastian hesitated for a moment before taking it. I'm of the same mind as you. I believe the court has outlived its usefulness. Its members have fallen and forgotten why we joined the court in the first place and become obsessed with power. She was cut off by Sebastian. And you haven't. She laughed at that before sipping from her glass. I'll admit I can't say I don't love the power, but I do know when love becomes obsession. So what exactly are you after? Sebastian spoke as he downed his glass. A partnership. We, alongside the Bat, work together to take down the court. Just like the old days. Jeff, after hesitating, did not approach the Stacy family but got in his car and headed straight home. Jeff soon arrived home to see a limo packed before his gates with the all-too-familiar bald lady standing guard. Jeff parked his car and got out with T-Shaka following his lead as both of them stood inches away from one another. Your Highness, Jeff spoke first. Batman, T-Shaka responded with a smile. T-Shaka finally found the Batman's identity after seeing him that night with his suit all but destroyed after the building collapse. Would you like to come in? No need, T-Shaka spoke, raising his hand to stop him. I'll admit, I was surprised when I found out you were the Batman of all people. You were on the bottom of my list as to who could be the Batman. Jeff smiled as he heard that. I will be heading back to Wakanda. Unfortunately, Cloud took advantage of the chaos to escape, but we managed to retrieve the vibranium. T-Shaka continued. I guess it was a victory then, Jeff said. Barely, T-Shaka sighed. To be honest, I'm getting too old for this. Maybe it's time my son took over. Either way, before I leave, I thought I should leave something with you. T-Shaka's words caused Jeff to raise a brow. One of the Dora Milaje came before Jeff with a briefcase in hand. Opening, Jeff saw it was filled with vibranium and looked towards T-Shaka. I thought with your suit gone and all, maybe this could help in making a new one. What happened to Wakanda not sharing vibranium? Jeff questioned as he held the briefcase. I think you are different from the others, Mr. King, and you will be able to put that to good use. Jeff nodded at T-Shaka's words. If you ever need my help, you can count on me. Chaka smiled at those words, and you will always have Wakanda's help when you need it. Goodbye, Mr. King. T-Shaka headed back with his guards. Goodbye, Your Highness. Jeff got into his car after watching T-Shaka drive off. At this time in Afghanistan, Tony Stark stood before a group of military men giving a speech. Is it better to be feared or respected? I say it is too much to ask for both. With that in mind, I humbly present the crown jewel of Stark Industries' Freedom Line. It's the first missile system to incorporate our proprietary repulsor technology. They say the best weapon is the one you never have to fire. I respectfully disagree. I prefer the weapon you only have to fire once. That's how Dad did this, And that's how America does it, and for that matter, it has worked out pretty well so far. Find an excuse to let one of these off the chain and I guarantee you, the bad wouldn't even want to come out of their caves. With those words, Tony gestured to start, and the missiles were loaded, causing all the people present to turn to face the device, which had the missiles atop of it. A missile was fired, and as it approached its target, it split into many more missiles. For your consideration, the Jericho. With those words, the missiles made contact, producing a massive explosion, sending a massive cloud of dust their way and literally blowing the hats off of all those present. Jeff, seeing the news about Tony in Afghanistan and the Jericho missile, as well as him being missing, had a smirk on his face. He wondered about the look on Tony's face as his own missile exploded before him. Iron Man was literally happening. Soon old men from World War II will be returning, and big green rage monsters will be brawling with ugly gray monsters. Oh, and who can forget the two iconic arrogant gods? Jeff's eyes moved to his new suit. His suit was made with the vibranium he received along with what he snagged from Oscorp. Surprise, an artificial symbiote. Artificial because Jeff had run some tests and was 90% sure that this wasn't alien life, and also he had failed to find any form of intelligence within. The black suit with silver accents was nothing short of a work of art. The suit's mask now covered his whole face and could take the impact from a frickin' missile. The batsuit was also fitted with an electric system that allows him to shock assailants and a whole slew of other features hidden within, courtesy of the King Fortune. And to him the most important feature is the suit being able to shrink into his watch. I see you've seen the news, sir. Sebastian walked in, interrupting Jeff's thoughts. I have. Should I prepare the Batwing, sir? Sebastian tentatively asked, causing Jeff to finally turn to face him with a look of confusion on his face. To save Master Stark, Sebastian continued. No, Tony will eventually return and there are some things to take care of here. Jeff considered heading over to save Tony, but upon further consideration he decided against it. This event was the turning point for Tony and was a necessity for the birth of Iron Man. Hence, Jeff decided he wouldn't interfere, but that didn't mean he couldn't make some money. Stark Industries' stock price had begun to fall with the news of Tony going missing, and Jeff knew it would fall even further when the Merchant of Death returned and announced Stark Industries' exit from the arms market. This would be the best time to acquire their stocks. When the events of Iron Man 1 are over, Jeff wonders what look Tony would have when he finds out that Jeff owns a majority of shares. Sebastian, tell the company to grab as much of Stark Industries stock as possible, but make sure not to draw attention whilst doing so. Sebastian was puzzled by the order but didn't refuse and headed out to pass them on. In another part of the city, Gwen could be seen in sportswear, her hair tied into a bun with sweat snaking from her forehead down her face and into her clothes, drenching them as she continued punching at a punching bag. The thumping sound of her taped fist as it made contact with a sandbag was the only sound in the entire warehouse. The warehouse was one of the many abandoned warehouses in the city, which she had transformed into her personal gym earlier on but abandoned after her meeting with the Batman. But after what happened recently, she was back here once more, as this was the only place where she could momentarily forget about everything. Ah! Gwen screamed as she delivered a fierce punch, making a fist-sized hole in the sandbag. After doing so, Gwen fell on her butt, sitting on the ground taking in deep breaths in a futile attempt to calm down. She couldn't calm down. The only time she was calm was when she was hitting something. Her eyes drifted to her bag and spotted her batsuit, which she had brought along, and she came to a decision. Jeff was seated before his bat computer, going through files he had managed to retrieve from Norman's damaged hard drive. Jeff had not forgotten that Norman was not alone and that some court was apparently out to get him. Jeff did not plan to leave the court alone, as they were an uncontrollable factor, much less one that should not have existed originally. From his understanding, Jeff knew that Sebastian created them to control the crime in the city, so he returned to a safe city. But like all comic universes, something went wrong and they decided to become rulers of the underworld now. With the amount of threats he had to deal with, Jeff was not keen on the idea of a new one popping up, much less one of his own making. In an undisclosed location, a group of people were seated around a table. Norman failed, and even caused a whole lot of trouble, Chris spoke up. A whole lot of eyes have been drawn here recently, due to Osborn's antics. All those guys after the super serum will be here soon enough, another person spoke up. The others thought more about the serum. They were from that time and some had even seen Captain America in action, so they would be lying if they said they weren't interested in the serum. Was there any trace of the serum when our people went over? Chris asked. There was nothing but rubble. If there was anything, only the Batman knows. What about you, Obadiah? Chris turned to the bald member, who was silent throughout. Starks are missing and my stocks are dropping. I'm sorry but won't be able to provide a lot of weapons to hunt the Batman. Obadiah spoke up. Understand, you deal with Stark Industries, and we will handle the Batman. Huff. Huff. Heavy breaths could be heard as the Mun ran through the alleyways. The man kept looking back as he ran. His panic clear on his face, ducking down a corner, he hid behind a trash can, peeking his head to see if he had lost his pursuer. After a few more seconds he thought he had lost his pursuer and let out a sigh of relief. As he did so, he was grabbed by the hair and slammed face-first into a wall. He let out a grunt of pain as a trail of blood trailed down his nose. Please, I'm begging you. Please, I'll turn myself in. Just let me go. God. Please. He isn't here right now. A distorted voice spoke, but I am, were the last words his attacker let out before blood-curdling screams broke through the night. The next day, rise and shine, sir. Sebastian spoke up as he parted the curtains to allow the sun rays into the room. Jeff groggily awoke with dark circles around his eyes as the rays found his face. Morning, Sebastian. Jeff replied to Sebastian's greeting. I took the liberty of preparing breakfast. Sebastian spoke as he moved to serve Jeff. Thank you, Sebastian. Pleasure, sir. Sebastian gave a smile before moving out of the room to allow Jeff to get ready. Half an hour later Jeff was out, refreshed, moving straight to the Batcave. Jeff, with the help of Sebastian and Oracle, had compiled files on the members of the court. Jeff sat to look through the files when a certain individual caught his attention. And here I was thinking I wasn't going to get involved with Iron Man 1, Jeff muttered to himself as he saw an image of Obadiah Stane, the Mun who was the antagonist in the first Iron Man movie. Jeff was in thought when an alarm caught his attention. Moving his eyes to the screen, he frowned before getting up. In Afghanistan, Tony awoke to lying on a bed in an unfamiliar place. Scrunching his face, he pulled out a tube that was passed through his nose. Tony looked to his side and saw a cup of water by his side and tried reaching for it, only for him to push it down. Tony let out a few coughs before he spotted a Mun shaving before a piece of glass. His eyes widened before he reached for a bottle, only to feel resistance from his chest. I wouldn't do that if I were you. The Mun spoke. Hearing this, Tony looked behind him to spot a car battery. He began tracing the wire to his chest and felt something under his clothes. He began ripping his shirt and then his bandage until he finally saw what was under and began taking in shallow breaths. After calming down, Tony was seated on the bed with a car battery before himself, looking at the Mun prepare some food as he whistled. What the hell did you do to me? Tony finally spoke. What did I do? What I did was to save your life. I removed all the shrapnel I could, but there was a lot left. It was headed into your atrium septum. Here, want to see? The Mun raised a small container containing the shrapnel up for Tony to see. Take a look. He threw the glass container over to Tony. I've seen a lot of wounds like that back in my village. We call them the Walking Dead, because it takes about a week for the bombs to reach the vital organs. What is this? Tony cut him off. That is an electromagnet hooked up to a car battery, and it's keeping the shrapnel from entering your heart. Tony looked down at the contraption and his thoughts went back to that moment when his missile landed right in front of his face. At that moment his thought went to what his friend Jeff said. Aren't you worried one day your missile is gonna blow up in your face? How he wished he had listened to him then. With that thought, Tony zipped up his hoodie. Back in NYC, Batman was at a scene investigating a series of gangsters who got beaten to an inch of their lives. The reason for him being here is the batarangs found at the scene, which made him wonder just who it was that was impersonating him this time. Bats was back in the Batcave, with his suit on without the mask. Oracle pull up all cameras around the area around the time when the incident took place. With his words, multiple videos appeared on his screens showing different angles of the place. There, get rid of the others and show me camera 14. The other videos disappeared, leaving only a video where one guy burst out of the building and ran into an alley. Follow him. Another camera feed was brought up showing the Mun weaving through alleyways before taking a turn in one without cameras. Sorry, sir, but there are no cameras in that alley. The scowl on Jeff's face deepened before he got up, leaving with his mask covering his face once more. In a few minutes Batman had arrived at the alleyway, and by the look of things, the police had yet to reach here. He headed into the alleyway, where he soon found the Mun, all battered and bloodied, lying unconscious. Batman spotted something on the guy and bent down to have a closer look. There was a bat symbol burnt into the guy's skin. Batman stretched his hand out to touch it. Right before he did, the guy regained consciousness. Seeing the Batman, the guy became scared, started screaming, and attempted to crawl away but failed to do so with his broken limbs. Batman watched him for a few seconds before calling the police and disappeared. On a rooftop, Batman watched as the police alongside an ambulance arrived. Oracle, check the records for people brought in recently who are branded with a bat symbol. Within a few seconds, his heads-up display had pictures of 6 people with varying degrees of injuries, all having the bat symbol burnt onto them. Where were they found? The pictures disappeared, leaving a map with 6 red spots representing where each of them was found. Analyze the material of the batarang. Batman spoke as he looked at the batarang he had nabbed from the scene. The materials used in the batarang were now on Batman's HUD as he looked through them carefully, when he spotted something odd. The material used was similar to that of a chop saw blade. The only thing is people don't use that anymore and have improved the material, so bring up old warehouses and abandoned factories near the 6 locations. 4 new spots were added to the map. Take out the others, leave only the one involved in chop saw storage or production. With that, he had only 1 warehouse left on the map. Batman had arrived at the location, sneaking in through the vents. Jumping down, Batman made his way through the factory and soon arrived at what could only be called a makeshift gym. Batman looked around before moving deeper in. He arrived and found what he was looking for. There were batarangs laid on a table before him with chop saws on the other side. Batman picked one up before placing it down and moving to the workbench. The workbench had a power cutter on it, which Batman touched only to feel it was still hot. Feeling the heat, he realized that it must have been used recently. Batman's eyes widened before jumping to the side, avoiding a batarang, which came from behind and embedded itself into the wall. Batman looked to the source to see a familiar figure in a familiar costume. Gwen cut him off. No, don't you dare. You told me you were enough and now my dad is dead because of you. Her words struck Jeff, as his guilt washed over him once more. Gwen charged at him once more, firing batarangs at him. Batman avoided them before ducking to avoid an overhead kick from her. Arg! Gwen screamed at him before trying to punch him, with Batman blocking her attacks and flipping her into some crates. Gwen, calm down. Don't tell me to calm down. She pulled out 2 batons and charged at Batman once more, pushing him back. Shing! Her batons were slashed in half by Batman's batarang before a knee was sent into her abdomen, sending her rolling on the ground. She grabbed a steel pipe as she got to her feet and swung straight for Batman's head, but Batman grabbed it before it could make contact with his head. Pulling on the pipe, he brought her close and put her in a headlock. Gwen struggled to get loose. Let me go. Listen to me. His words stunned Gwen. I understand your pain. Trust me, I truly do. I can help you get justice, but if you really want to do this, you need training. At those words, Gwen finally stopped struggling. Do you mean, you're going to train me? Batman let go of her as she turned to face him. This place is awesome. Gwen exclaimed as she looked around at the Batcave. After her conversation with the Batman, he had brought her in the Batmobile through a secret tunnel into the Batcave. Gwen moved around looking at Batman's training equipment before her eyes turned to the suits, which were lined up. Jeff was Batman after all and had a copy of each suit he made, but after he improved upon them, he kept them down here. Gwen traced her fingers along his first batsuit before moving on to the others in awe of them. Something sparkled in the corner, drawing her attention, but before she could get close, Batman cut her off. So, do I get a suit? This is where you will be training. I expect to see you here every day at 4 p.m. Batman ignored a question and began speaking in a strange tone, which was both calm and authoritative. He began walking to his combat training room with Gwen following after, but then she stopped and asked a question, which caused Batman to come to a halt. Why did you say justice? When you came up to me, you said you could help me get justice, not do good or get closure but get justice. Why is that? The Green Goblin is dead, right? So what did you mean by that? Gwen asked the questions that had been on her mind on the way here. Bats came to a halt before turning to face her. All was silent for a minute or two before he spoke up. There were people behind Norman. Those words were like a bomb in Gwen's ears. Her eyes widened and stood still with her mouth open, unable to utter any words for a few seconds. What do you mean when you say there were people behind Norman? Gwen asked as she clenched her fist, struggling to keep her voice calm and even. They are known as the Court. Norman was a member. Batman's words caused her to take a step back as her eyes widened before she rushed at him and held on to him. Then why are you just standing here? Why aren't you going after them? Gwen looked right at him, her eyes betraying her emotions. The people involved aren't easy to go after. It takes time to take them out for good. Gwen cut him off. No, you don't give me that. Isn't that why you do this, so you can do what the police can't? If you can't do this, then what even is the point? Gwen turned to leave after she was done, but Batman held onto her hand tightly, preventing her from leaving. I will take them out, but I want to do it in a way that leaves no remnants who can rise up and do what they did to your father to anyone else, because trust me, I understand your pain more than you know. Gwen scoffed before yanking her hand free. Yeah, right. How do you expect me to trust a man whose face I have never seen before? Batman remained silent for a moment before he spoke up. You're right. Gwen stood dumbfounded, as she expected lots of words but not those two words. Gwen parted her lips to speak, but a shocking sight was happening right before her. Batman's mask had turned to some sort of viscous material and was retreating from his head, revealing the identity of the man underneath, which caused her parted lips to open wide enough to swallow an egg whole. You're. Jeffrey King is the Batman. At Eve's club. Hello, Eve. Chris had appeared in Eve's club and made his way to her. Chris, and here I thought you would be busy with your bat hunt. Oh, I am. I have some things in the works, but I thought with your help things would go smoothly. Eve raised a brow hearing his words. What help could I possibly offer you? Eve questioned him. I just wanted to know, who is the Batman? Eve took a swing of her glass before looking him dead in the eye. I'm sorry to disappoint, but I have no idea. Hearing her answer, Chris stared her down, both remaining in silence for a whole minute. A shame. Oh well, on to the other reason as to why I'm here. I need you to convince Sebastian to join us once more. The boss is retired. I don't think he's coming back, Eve spoke up. Please Eve, you and I both know your relationship with him was more than just professional. Eve stood moving away, leaving her final words. He is retired. I have things to do, Chris. I trust you know the way out. It's been a whole month since Gwen began her Hell Jeff called training. Her only saving grace through the whole ordeal was Sebastian. Huff. Gwen was panting as she stepped out of the simulation room, completely soaked in her own sweat. Thank you, Sebastian. She spoke as she took the towel and bottle of water offered to her by Sebastian. It's a pleasure, miss. Sebastian spoke with his kind grandfather smile on his face. The Batmobile pulled in, with Batman jumping out and heading straight for his computer only to be stopped by Gwen. Hey Jeff. Batman stopped and turned to face her, hearing her call for him. Where were you? Taking down an illegal arms market, okay, and the court? What about them? Jeff questioned back. I thought when you brought me in on this, you said we would be going after the court, that we would make them pay for what they did to my dad, but all you've done for the past month is stop petty thieves, drug warehouses, and illegal arms markets, leaving me here with Sebastian and those annoying bots. Gwen's rant was cut off by a batarang, which flew straight at her head without any warning. What the hell? Gwen screamed as she caught the batarang mere inches away from her face. Leaving you here is so you can train and improve yourself, and those things you deem useless are helping to destroy the court's business. Without their business, they begin to run out of funds and lose control of the criminal underworld. Without that, they are just a bunch of old men who are easy to take out. At the end of the Batman's words, he was standing right before Gwen with the pressure he was emanating, causing her to remain silent. Well, I could help. I still think I should be out there with you rather than stuck in this cave all the time. Gwen argued back, you're not ready, were the only words Batman left Gwen before he received an important call. A few hours before Batman received the call, somewhere in Afghanistan. Guns were fired in a cave by 3 men. One stopped to speak to the other when he was hit on the side by a metal arm. The other 2 didn't hesitate and continued to fire, but their guns proved ineffective against the metal humanoid, who proceeded to take them all out. The figure continued walking through a tunnel where it was met with more gunfire. Seeing their weapons were ineffective, one of them stupidly charged at the metal humanoid while screaming and was smacked into a wall. The metal continued his journey, tearing through their pitiful defense like paper. Some of the remaining men were able to run and close the metal doors behind them before turning to face it with their guns, praying it could hold back whatever the thing back there was. Unfortunately, one man was too late and was stuck behind the gates banging and pleading to be let in. The people heard it but didn't make a move to open the gates as the heavy thuds got louder, signaling the metal humanoid was close. The man's screams got louder and even more desperate before they came to an end. The screams they heard were now replaced with heavy thuds, which caused visible deformations in the gate. The men didn't hesitate and took to their heels, right in time as the gates were smashed open only moments later. It was chaos as the men ran for their lives. During the metal humanoid's rampage, one of its arms got lodged into a wall and it began struggling to free its arm when one man took notice of this. The man pulled out his handgun and slowly made his way to the metal humanoid before shooting at its head, only for the bullet to ricochet and take him out. The metal humanoid finally took notice of him but paid him no heed as it pulled its hands free. The metal humanoid made it to the entrance only to be fired at with a grenade launcher, which fortunately missed, before it responded with a rocket of its own. The metal humanoid, seeing there were no more injuries, came over to the side of an injured man, and taking off its visor, it was revealed that this was none other than Tony Stark. "Come on, we have to go," Tony spoke to the man who lay on some sacks bleeding. "I'm moving you. We had a plan." "Come on, stick to it," Tony spoke once more. "This was always the plan, Stark," Hoenson spoke in a faint voice. "Come on, you're going to see your family get up," Tony continued. "My family's dead. I'm going to see them now, Stark." Hoenson's words caused Tony to remain silent. "It's okay. I want this. I want this." Hoenson struggled to speak. Tears began to form in Tony's eyes. "Thank you for saving me. Don't waste it. Don't waste your life." Hoenson left his last words before shutting his eyes. Tony, full of grief, now slowly walked out of the cave in his Markai armor, coming face to face with his captors, who had formed a line and opened fire immediately they saw him. Tony stood still, taking all their fire, as they caused him no harm and only produced sparks. The men after a while stopped firing and stared wide-eyed. "My turn," Tony spoke as he spat fire at them, incinerating them as well as his weapons with each step. Some of the men who managed to avoid the flames screamed out in fear. Tony's steps were soon halted as a man a bit farther away fired his submachine gun, with others following suit. They seemed to suppress Tony as he fell to all fours. Tony continued to fight back, blowing stuff up, before activating his thrusters to fly away, leaving a flaming mushroom cloud behind. Unfortunately, his suit didn't last long as he screamed all the way down, falling into the desert. The suit fell to pieces with the impact, but Tony survived. Taking off his helmet, he looked around before muttering to himself, "Not bad." Minutes later, Tony wandered through the desert before helicopters arrived and he screamed in joy as he fell on his knees. Rhodey ran up to him with other soldiers in tow. "How was the Humvee?" Tony responded with a smile as he heard that. Rhodey stretched out his hand to Tony's shoulders before coming down to eye level with him and said, "Next time you ride with me, okay?" and hugged him. A plane arrived at the airport with Pepper, Happy and Jeff standing and waiting for Tony to get off. Tony was escorted by Rhodey down before Tony waved away paramedics who arrived with a stretcher. Your eyes are red. A few tears for your long-lost boss." Tony came up and spoke to Pepper, who was all smiles seeing Tony. "Tears of joy. I hate job hunting." "Yeah, well, vacation's over," Tony said as he turned to face Jeff. "You missed me, buddy?" Jeff smirked as he answered. "First few weeks. Nah, then I thought, what the hell?" Tony scoffed at that, smiling before they all entered the car. "Where to, sir?" Happy asked as they were all seated. "To the hospital?" Pepper spoke but was rejected by Tony. "No." Jeff turned to Tony. "No, what do you mean no?" "Exactly, Tony, you need to go to the hospital," Pepper continued but was cut off by Tony. I don't have to do anything. I've been in captivity. There are two things I want to do. I want an American cheeseburger, and the other. Both Jeff and Pepper cut him off. No, by Jeff, and that's enough of that, by Pepper. It's not what you think. I want you to call for a press conference. Both Pepper and Jeff turned to face Tony with incredulous looks. Jeff knew what Tony was about to do but pretended to be as clueless as Pepper. Tony, that's too early. Press can wait, Jeff tried to convince Tony, knowing it would be futile. Yes, what he said. Tony, press conference? What on earth for? As the car moved on, Jeff remained in silence as he began thinking about how things were going to turn out now. People began applauding as they arrived, with Obadiah even getting the door for Tony before hugging him as Happy brought the burger, which Tony grabbed as he headed in with Jeff and Pepper following after. Jeff stood by Pepper as Tony made his way through the swarm of reporters. Excuse me, a voice from their side caused them to turn when Pepper spoke, assuming it was another reporter. Yes, we're not part of the press conference, but it's about to begin right now. I'm not a reporter. I'm Agent Phil Coulson with the Strategic Homeland Intervention Enforcement and Logistics Department. The man spoke up and Jeff almost burst out laughing but held it in. That's quite a mouthful, Pepper spoke as she took the card he handed her. Almost as though someone wanted to spell out SHIELD. I know, Coulson responded with his smile ever present. You know we have been approached by the DoD, the FBI, and the CIA. We are a separate division with more of a specific focus. We need to debrief Mr. Stark on the circumstances of his escape. Jeff began paying attention to the press conference as Tony made all the reporters sit and then talk about his father before speaking about what he saw before standing and making his way back to the podium. That is why, effective immediately, I'm shutting down Stark Industries' weapons manufacturing program. With those words, it was pandemonium. Obadiah screamed as he caused damage to the office supplies in a fit of rage. Things aren't going your way, are they? A voice interrupted his raging, causing him to turn around. There stood Chris with a broad grin evident on his face, clearly enjoying this. Obadiah let out a deep breath, calming himself before speaking up. What are you doing here? Your lovely secretary let me in. Love her, by the way, Chris replied, his smile not disappearing for even a second. Obadiah's face remained stoic, clearly not in the mood. Chris saw this and went straight to the point. I saw the news. Your boy created such big news immediately after he returned. Crack. Obadiah snapped a pen in his hand when he heard that again. That brat, idiots, the whole lot of them. I get them to do one thing and they fail miserably and now he's back. Apparently he's seen Jesus or some shit, damn it all. Calm down, you're aging, you know. Stress isn't really good for your health. Obadiah nearly burst a vein hearing that. You're not here just to annoy me, so why are you really here? Obadiah questioned him. Your little side project is failing, miserably might I add. Let's work together. You help us with the bat problem, and we help you with the kid. Aren't you the least bit curious on how he escaped? Obadiah raised a brow hearing that, and before he could ask. I care about each member and might have some monitoring in place. So what say you? I help you retrieve it and study it, and you help deal with a certain flying rodent. There was but silence in the office for a minute or two before Obadiah spoke up. Deal. At the Batcave, Jeff had returned to Sebastian and Gwen, who started firing off questions as soon as she saw him. Tony Stark is alive. How did he escape? How did you even get to know him? What happened to him over there? Why is he shutting down the weapons program? Jeff cut Gwen off. Today's training is over. Go home. Wait, what? Gwen spoke about to argue but was cut off by Jeff. See you tomorrow. Walking away with those words, leaving Gwen, who stood still for a while before relenting. How was Master Stark, sir? Sebastian spoke up after seeing Gwen huff and storm out. Tony is. Tony. So what now, sir? I have gotten information on a club. Apparently a lot of the court's money is hidden there. Jeff spoke as he began to suit up. When I was in charge, I left the financials to Chris, so I'm not exactly sure, but if it really is there, then this would cripple them and force them out of the shadows. Exactly, and when they do come out, I will finally be able to deal with this threat once and for all. What? Jeff asked as he saw Sebastian with a concerned look on his face. Sebastian hesitated but eventually said, "Nothing, sir, do come back safely." Music was blaring at full volume as people kept moving their bodies to the beat, with some others indulging in alcohol and drugs. A typical scene at a club was happening, but this scene was soon interrupted as the lights and music suddenly went out. The people were confused, with some grumbling out in annoyance and some thinking something was wrong. A gunshot resounded soon after, and chaos ensued as people screamed as they tried to escape the place. The gangbangers and security rushed in with their guns to deal with whatever was going on, but unfortunately for them, in the cover of darkness, the Batman was invincible. Batman picked them off one by one before soon arriving in an office and taking out a man who tried to ambush him. The manager at this point was scared, as he was sweating bullets as he raised his hands in surrender. "Where is it?" Batman questioned in his distorted voice. I don't know what you're talking about." The man stuttered as he responded. "Where is the money?" Batman questioned as he took a few steps forward. Don't know." He shook his head vigorously, but his eyes kept shifting to one side. Batman followed his eyesight before punching him and knocking him out. He turned his attention to a bookshelf, which the guy's eyes kept shifting to. Pushing it away, a secret entrance was revealed. At this moment Sebastian received a call. "Hello?" "Sebastian, hurry, call the Batman back. Chris has set a trap. I wasn't told anything. My spy just got information. You have to get him out now." Batman walked into the dark underground safe with night vision, allowing him to see clearly, but he was stunned. There was nothing. At this point all his muscles tightened before he quickly ducked, avoiding a wide swing for the back of his head before grabbing it and twisting it. A shriek of pain was soon heard before a thud knocked the assailant out. At this point Bats had entered a battle stance as he was surrounded. The men charged, but before they could get close, Bat's suit spread out, taking them all out, engulfing the room and pushing Bats out all at the same time. Bats rolled out his suit, returning to his base state as he looked around. Countless men had Batman surrounded. The men were all dressed in a special uniform, with a symbol on their chest catching Batman's eye. There was a short stare down before all the men rushed Batman with cold weapons. Batman moved through them with ease, blocking their attacks before trading blows whilst firing batarangs at them. Batman had managed to make a gap in his encirclement and was about to deliver a heavy punch when a gunshot was heard and he was sent into a wall. Batman grabbed his ribs as the pain was excruciating, looking at the men who were about to rush him once more, but he failed to see the shooter. He was now concerned. His suit was undoubtedly bulletproof, so he was sure that whatever that was that sent him flying into it was not a normal bullet. The shooter couldn't kill him but could definitely hurt him. Using the wall, he flipped away to avoid a sword swing and jumped into the midst of his attackers, and using his gymnastic prowess, he made quick work of them. At this moment Batman was in the crosshairs of a scope, as the shooter planned another shot, this one at his head, but just before he could pull the trigger, a cable wrapped around his neck and pulled him away. From the shadows Gwen jumped out in her own batsuit and before long was back-to-back with the Batman. "What are you doing here?" "Agent S said you needed help." "I can handle this." "Clearly." At this point Batman turned her around, taking a bullet before firing a batarang at the shooter. In a few minutes, they were the only ones standing, with Gwen having a few scratches here and there and visible damage to her suit while Batman stood totally unscathed. Gwen turned to Batman, expecting her thank you or good job. Instead, she got, "You were and are not ready for the field." "Excuse me. I just saved your arse. You're welcome, by the way." Gwen snapped at Batman. Batman remained calm without the slightest fluctuation in his tone. "I didn't need your help. I'm bulletproof and impervious to a whole array of weapons. They couldn't harm a hair on my head even if I stood still." His words finally caused Gwen to actually pay attention to his suit and the fact that it didn't look like he just walked out of a battle. "Oh, when do I get a suit like that?" Gwen questioned, but Batman ignored her as he paid attention to the special weapon that actually hurt him before his eyes were drawn to the wiring of the place alongside some pipes. Batman's eyes widened before he turned, grabbed Gwen and jumped out of the building, with Gwen asking what the hell was going on. She was soon answered as the building she just jumped out of was blown sky high, turning the night sky bright orange. "Wow," was all Gwen could say. In another place Chris and Obadiah could be seen watching a screen with a video being shown, being the building being blown sky high. Your plan failed, Obadiah spoke up, but Chris just smiled and took a sip of his drink before speaking up. Did it, though? We now have more information on the Batman and his sidekick, and we also got some interesting data on his suit. Now you can't tell me you are not interested in that suit. Obadiah looked him straight in the eye, and the greed in his eyes could not be hidden. Seeing that, Chris smiled. Now the next time we strike, the Bat won't be escaping. Batman walked into the Batcave with Gwen in tow. Sir. Sebastian began but was cut off by a loud bang that resulted as Batman punched the wall, leaving a clear fist print with web-like cracks around it. Sebastian remained silent seeing this, while Gwen's eyes jumped as she began to see just how much force was behind that punch. Miss Gwen, could you give me and Master Jeff a moment? Sebastian spoke up with his tone even. Gwen wanted to argue to stay, but the fist print clearly present there discouraged her. Gwen nodded before walking away from them and deeper into the Batcave. Sebastian watched her until he could no longer see her before he turned back to face Jeff, whose cowl had retracted to reveal his face, which spoke volumes about how he was feeling at that moment. I should have known, Jeff began as he paced the room. Sir, Sebastian tried to speak up but Jeff ignored him, continuing his rant. Batman should have known it was way too easy to get that info. Batman should have realized that the atmosphere was wrong, that the guy was deliberately hinting at that place. That everything was a trap, I should have known. Jeff exclaimed as he slammed his fist into the table. Jeffrey. Sebastian shouted, finally drawing Jeff out of his rant and self-loathing. Who is the Batman? Jeff scrunched his face in confusion hearing Sebastian's question. What? Sebastian repeated, who is the Batman? I am. Are you? Because as far as I've seen, you have kept referring to him as though he is someone else. Sebastian argued, taking a step closer. That's because he is, because when I put on this suit I become something more, I become the Batman. Jeff took a step, not backing down. No. No. Batman questioned with his brow raised. I have watched you put on that batsuit for years and I know you are lying. What? From the day you told me about all of this. No, before that, when you first met Stark, you changed. It's like you were lost, like you were trying to prepare for something with all that training but not knowing how. Sebastian continued, but then when your parents died, don't. Jeff's face became cold at the mention of his parents, but Sebastian pushed on. When your parents died and you came back that stormy night, your eyes were different, like you decided on a path. Then you left for years and came back and showed me this, all this. Sebastian motioned to the Batcave with his hands. Remember, I asked you why you chose to dress like a bat. At that point you lied. I have known you from the day you were born and I am absolutely sure you are not afraid of bats. Every night you go out in that suit, it's like you're someone else. You're not pretending to be the Batman, but you know who you think should be wearing that suit. Sebastian's words hit hard, causing Jeff's face to regain an emotion as he took a step back. You try so hard to be whoever this person is. I don't know who he is and I don't know why you try so hard to be him, but whoever he isn't here. They are not the ones risking their lives fighting for a city that doesn't want them. You are. You are the men under that suit. You, Jeffrey King, are the Batman, not whoever you think is so start acting like the man I believe in, like the man that girl chose to believe in, because that's the man we decided to follow, not whoever you think we should follow. Sebastian turned and walked away after his rant, leaving the silent Jeff alone in the Batcave. Jeff turned to the Batcomputer, and as he saw the dark screen, what looked back at him wasn't his reflection but rather Bruce Wayne, who looked a lot like Christian Bale. The image caused him to jump back and take in deep breaths to calm down. At this point he thought back to what Sebastian said and he knew he was right. When he was reborn, he tried to adapt to a new life and even accept his new family, but then he met Stark. One of the most famous characters in the MCU, Tony Stark, and then it hit him. It hit him that he wasn't enough, that he needed to be something more to survive, but he didn't know what. He was average in his past life and so he was lost and latched on to all the training he could get. But then Hydra came, and he lost his family. At that point he related to someone, to Bruce. An ordinary human like himself who with training and self-determination, brought himself to the point where he could challenge the gods. And so he mimicked him, tried to be him. There were other ways, maybe even better and easier ways to gain power. There was no guarantee the Ancient One would have taught him magic, as his thoughts were confused at that point in his life, but he could have tried, but he didn't because Bruce wasn't a sorcerer. He defeated them a lot, but he wasn't one, and so he didn't try at all. But Sebastian was right, he wasn't Bruce Wayne, and no matter how hard he tried he couldn't be him, and it was time he accepted that. A beep drew him out of his thoughts. Looking to the screen, schematics for the gun that shot him were brought up, including all info that could be drawn from all databases available about it. From the info Jeff found out, it was a prototype developed by the government and by the government agency S.H.I.E.L.D. alongside Stark Industries, and it is apparently made as one of the many countermeasures for the Hulk. That explained why the suit was barely enough and also meant Obadiah was involved in the trap. Jeff was about to call for a trace, but then he saw the image of Bruce once more and grabbed his head, thinking to himself he needed to take some time to think. Turning away, he walked out of the Batcave. It had been a few days since the explosion, and Jeff had that conversation with Sebastian. Jeff had been unable to put on the suit to go out, leaving the public to wonder where the Batman had gone. That was not all, as some people had put their attention on the explosion, trying their hardest to figure out what exactly had happened. Hill, what have you found? Fury turned to face Hill as she walked into the control center where he stood, with his eye combing through screens. Sir, we have been unable to find out what exactly happened in the building. We did find some interesting things. At this, Fury turned to look her right in the eyes with his eye. First of all, the Batman wasn't alone. Security cams around the building were deactivated around the time the explosion happened, but one of our own caught something. Hill spoke as she brought up an image of Batman jumping out with Gwen in his hands. Fury's eye narrowed seeing this. Batman seems to have a sidekick. How is the task I handed you earlier going? Fury asked. Still no luck, sir, but with this we think we might have something. Fury nodded, motioning for her to continue with her early report. Among the wreckage we recovered this. Another picture was brought up and Fury's scowl got even deeper as he saw it. This is ours, is it not? Explain. Yes, sir, the weapon is indeed ours, it's Project Sling. Hill nodded, confirming this. Then explain to me why the hell a weapon supposed to be locked up in a secure location is now found in the wreckage of a building that just exploded. We are working on it, sir, Hill spoke up. Well, work harder. Tell me you at least have something. We did pick up a new lead. We discovered traces of a group who call themselves the Court. The Court? I've never heard of them. We are S.H.I.E.L.D. How am I now hearing of this Court? Nick took a few steps forward, staring Hill straight in her eye. A/N, don't forget the members of the Court are almost all former SSR and are really good at hiding. This group has been completely silent. This was their first visible attack that has brought them to the light. Fury remained silent for a few moments before speaking up. Find everything about this Court. The Batman seems to be in a war with them. The last time the Bat got in a war with someone, it began raining bombs in New York. I don't care who you find, whether it's the Bats or this Court, I want them off the streets. Hill nodded before turning around and leaving. In Stark's Malibu mansion, Tony took a few steps as his suit was screwed onto him. He spoke as he picked up his faceplate. Jarvis, are you there? At your service, sir, his AI responded. Engage heads-up display. Check. Pull all preferences from the home interface. Will do, sir. All right, what do you say? I have indeed been uploaded, sir. We're online and ready, Jarvis responded. Okay, start the virtual walk around. Importing preferences and calibrating virtual environments. Check on controls, Tony ordered. As you wish, sir. After a minute Jarvis spoke again. Test complete. Preparing to shut down and begin diagnosis. Yeah, tell you what, do weather and ATC checks and start listening in on ground control. Tony interrupted Jarvis. Sir, there are still terabytes of calculations needed before actual flight is. Jarvis tried to argue but was cut off by Tony once more. Jarvis, sometimes you have to run before you can walk. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Tony spoke before getting into position as propulsion began lifting him off the ground. Yeah. Tony let out a shout as he flew out. After a minute of flying, Tony grinned like a kid before saying, handles like a dream, and speeding off. Tony soon came close to a Ferris wheel and zoomed in to see a boy whose ice cream fell as he spotted Tony, his disbelief clear in his eyes. Tony gave the kid a salute before flying higher. Okay, let's see what this thing can do. What's the SR-71's record? The altitude record for State Route 71 flights is 81,000 feet, sir. Records are meant to be broken. Tony shouted before speeding higher. Unfortunately, soon there was a buildup of ice. Sir, there is a potentially fatal buildup of icicles. Tony ignored it and tried to power through, but the suit couldn't handle it and went off, causing him to plummet. The ice stopped. Jarvis. Deploy flaps. Tony exclaimed, but there was no response. Jarvis. We have to break the ice. Tony exclaimed once more before manually opening the flaps just in time, allowing the suit to come online and narrowly avoiding a fatal fall. Ha 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 ha, Tony laughed out in relief as he flew back home. He slowly descended on his roof, and just as he was inches away from the roof he ordered, "Kill power." Tony fell straight through the building and into his garage, destroying one of his sports cars. It's been a while, but Tony had given the MK a new coat of paint and was now before his TV with a glass in hand. On the screen it showed the devastation the 10 rings were causing in Afghanistan. The picture made his blood boil as he remembered his time in captivity as well as Ho Eunson. His face hardened as he made a decision and placed the glass on the counter. In Afghanistan, missiles fell from the sky, causing deafening explosions along with giant dust clouds. Screams resounded as women took their children and tried to escape from the gunfire. One family rushed into a building to hide but were spotted. 2 men rushed after them. The terrorists soon began rounding up the women and children and lined up the men before a wall. A man tried to stick with his family, but he was pried off as his children and wife were moved to a truck. His son called out to him as he rushed to his side. The son managed to get to his father's side to give him a hug before the leader came over and ripped him off before pushing the man to the ground and stomping his chest a few times and ordering his man to have the man kneel. A gun was then pointed at his head with his family watching in terror, but just before they could pull the trigger, a sound was heard, which drew their attention. Looking up, they saw a sight they were sure to never forget. Above them was a flying, human-shaped metal man. The metal man landed right before a terrorist, in the iconic superhero pose. The terrorist looked at the metal man looking right at him and panicked. He pulled on the trigger, releasing a hail of bullets, but his gun caused no damage. Iron Man ignored it and slapped him into a building. That became the fuse. Everyone began firing at Iron Man, who ignored it and raised his arms, firing repulsor blasts at all the terrorists. Iron Man managed to take out a few. Turning to the rest, he saw they each had hostages. They had their guns pointed at the hostages and shouted for him to put his arms down. Iron Man watched them for a few and placed his hands to his side. In his HUD he locked on to all the terrorists and, before they could react, launched mini-rockets, taking them all out. All the hostages remained silent, all scared of this metal man. The boy wrestled his way out of his mother's arms and rushed to hug his father. The boy watched as Iron Man walked to a building and smashed his hand through a wall and pulled out the leader, flinging him onto the ground. "He's all yours." Iron Man left those words as he flew off. Iron Man soon locked on to the Jericho missiles, but before he could destroy them, he was shot down by a tank. Iron Man climbed out of the pit before avoiding another blast from the tank. He aimed at the tank and destroyed it with one rocket. He turned, ignoring the pitiful resistance from the terrorist, and took to the skies, destroying the last of the Jericho missiles and then flying away. In New York, Eve's club. A report about what had happened in Afghanistan was handed over to her. After glancing through, she had but one word to say: impressive. Eve was interrupted by Chris walking into her office. "Chris, to what do I owe this unexpected visit? How long have we known each other?" Chris asked a question that confused Eve. "I don't know, years. I mean, we fought Hydra together." "Right, we were all in that squad under the captain. We even got to meet Captain America a few times, didn't we?" Chris spoke with a smile as though recalling fond times. "Indeed we did. Why are we recalling old war stories, though?" Eve asked, a sinking feeling forming in her gut. Eve, I am just reminding you that I know you so well. A few nights ago I set a trap for the Batman, but he got help. Someone came to help him. Did you know?" "I had no idea." Eve responded, to which Chris began to chuckle. You are a good liar, I'll give you that. Eve put on a puzzled look, but it changed soon enough when Chris showed her a video. In the video, a Mun was being tortured, the reason Eve had a panicked look on her face. The Mun in the video was one of the many informants she had at Chris's side to obtain information, and this guy was the one who told her about the trap that night. Oh Eve, you were sloppy. Those words seemed to be a trigger, as soon the sound of gunshots was heard, along with the screams of her people outside. Eve did not hesitate to flip the table before her, which turned out to be a great decision. The table was flipped right on time to serve as a shield from a hail of bullets. It doesn't have to be like this, Eve. Just tell me, who is the Batman? Chris asked as he slowly walked over to Eve. Yeah, no. Eve pulled out a flashbang, which blinded Chris, enabling her to run out of her office. Eve pulled out her gun, firing at Chris's men, who all aimed at her, trying to take her out. Eve managed to evade most gunfire but still took a bullet to her shoulder. She ran down a hallway, stopping before a wall and pressing on a part to reveal a secret pathway, which closed behind her as she made her way through. Chris and his men arrived soon after, just missing her, before they continued down the hall unaware of the secret entrance right by them. After a few minutes of making her way through the underground tunnel, she came up in a warehouse. Moving to a corner, she began to take care of her wounds before taking out some bandages and bandaging her wound. Pulling down a tarp, an SUV was revealed. She got in the driver's seat and proceeded to open the glove box and pulled out a phone, dialing a number. Chris is on to me. At a classified location. An agent rushed into an office where Agent Hill was before a computer with a solemn look on her face. Ma'am, we just got information on the court. The agent's words got Hill to look up from her screen and right at him with a questioning look. In a few minutes she had arrived at Eve's club, which was surrounded by the police. She made her way, looking around at the place, which was riddled with bullet holes. Who does this club belong to? Hill questioned the agent by her side. A lady called Eve Monroe. Eve? I want all of this woman's information. I want to know just why the court is after her. Hill ordered yes, ma'am. The agent nodded before walking away. Hill stood alone in the club with a sinking feeling that something big was about to happen. In Afghanistan, Obadiah arrives to meet Raza and the 10 Rings, who have managed to gather pieces of the MKIN plan to trade with Obadiah for weapons. Obadiah, I'm glad you could make it. Raza speaks up as Obadiah descends from a helicopter. Raza, Obadiah responds with a smile. I hear you have something for me? Indeed I do. Raza nods to his men behind him, who bring over a few crates. Obadiah steps forward to open one and seeing what was inside, the smile on his face becomes even brighter. Raza, seeing he was satisfied, took this as his opportunity to speak up. This is what Stark used to escape. I'm pretty sure you would gain a lot if you were to understand the technology. Indeed I would. Obadiah responded, closed the crate and turned to face Raza to hear what he had to say. We are running low on weapons. We would appreciate a few Jerichos, and I am sure that is enough to pay for a few, am I right? Obadiah turned to look at the crates that Raza was pointing at. His smile had gone back to a false one at this point. Indeed, they are just. I asked you to kill Stark, so why is he alive? With those words, the atmosphere turned tense almost immediately. At this point Raza realized something was wrong. Before he could take any action, gunshots resounded as the court's army surrounded them. Raza's eyes widened, realizing it was all a trap. He turned, screaming at Obadiah. What is the meaning of this? Obadiah was waiting with a gun pointed at Raza. I told you, I want Stark dead. You failed. Bang. Obadiah shot Raza right in his head, killing him. Start moving this. The army obeyed Obadiah's orders and began transporting the crates. One soldier came over to Obadiah and handed him a phone. Hello. I take it you succeeded. Chris's voice came from the other end of the line. Indeed I did, and you? No, the bitch managed to escape. No? Then why do you sound so happy? Oh, Obadiah, you don't know Eve like I do. She is a professional. For her to betray us, whoever she is doing this for is extremely important and there is only one person alive who is important to her. So you see, I have yet to fail. Eve's car pulled up before King's Manor, where Sebastian stood waiting for her. Nice to see you, Eve, Sebastian spoke up as she stepped out of the vehicle. You owe me a club, was Eve's clever response. So what's the plan? Eve questioned as they made their way into the manor. We can no longer take things slowly, now we have no chance but to engage them in a head-to-head battle. Okay, so where do I fit in? Sebastian came to a halt at that. I have some safe houses WG, no. Eve cut Sebastian off. You don't get to sideline me. Chris just tried to kill me and destroyed my club. So I'm not leaving until Chris and the rest of those bastards are 6 feet under. Sebastian wanted to argue, let her fight, but a voice resounded, drawing their attention. As they turned to the source, they saw Jeff walking down the stairs. Jeffrey King, an honor. Jeff soon stood right before Eve and stared her in the eye. Eve Monroe. Okay, sir, then, boom. An explosion cut Sebastian off and sent the three of them to the floor. They began to struggle to their feet. We are surrounded. Jeff spoke up as the soldiers of the court began to march into the manor. Sebastian pressed on a part of the wall, causing it to move and reveal a whole slew of weapons. Whoa. Eve's eyes widened as she saw all the weapons on display. Sebastian grabbed twin blades and passed them over to Jeff and then passed an assault rifle to Eve before taking a shotgun. They nodded at one another before going their separate ways. Jeff soon came before 4 people who didn't hesitate to pull the trigger. Ducking and rolling, he managed to avoid the gunshots and got into their midst. Slicing at one of their legs, one was sent straight down. Jeff spun quickly, moving behind the man and using him as a shield against the others. Jeff pushed his human shield into one of them before moving before the other and slicing their throat. The last man finally got free, but Jeff pushed his gun above, causing him to shoot at the ceiling. Rapid punches were then delivered to the soldiers' guts before Jeff snapped their necks. With Sebastian, bang after bang was heard as the members of the court were blasted by Sebastian's shotgun. Sebastian ducked behind a pillar, avoiding a spray of bullets from soldiers who marched in. Ting. 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 Sebastian looked down to his side to see a grenade rolling over. He jumped away immediately to avoid the blast, which was only seconds later. Using his shotgun, Sebastian bashed one man in and grabbed his weapon and fired at the others. Bang! A gunshot resounded behind Sebastian. Looking behind, he was in time to see a soldier of the court falling with Eve standing there with a pistol at hand. You're welcome. Eve smirked. The battle continued, getting more intense with each passing minute. All 3 of them, Eve, Sebastian, and Jeff, had gathered in an office. Jeff kicked one more soldier away before locking themselves in. So now what? Eve questioned them both. Eve and Sebastian turned to Jeff, whose clothes were damaged but who was otherwise unharmed. We retreat. I have this sinking feeling that if we don't get out soon, we might never be able to, Jeff spoke up. Sebastian nodded before pulling a book, revealing a secret tunnel. Just how many tunnels do you guys have in this place? Sebastian smirked before they ran through the tunnel. Halfway through their retreat, a loud boom was heard, followed by a massive tremor. What the hell was that? Eve questioned as she looked behind. They came up from another exit and looked to the source. Where the manor once stood was now nothing more than flaming ruins. Seeing this, Jeff could not help but remember that night. Sir, are you okay? Yeah, Sebastian, let's head to the Batcave. The court will pay for this. There was a solemn silence after that for a minute or two before Eve spoke up. You guys have a cave. With pepper pots. Pepper was doing the task that Tony had assigned to her. She begins to discover some digital trails and soon discovers something more terrifying. The 10 Rings didn't plan on kidnapping Tony. Rather, it was an impromptu decision. Stain wanted to kill Tony. Oh my God, Tony. At this time, Obadiah realized something important as well. His scientists were too dumb and couldn't duplicate Stark's reactor. That left him with one option, getting it from Stark himself. Jeff arrived at the Batcave with Sebastian and Eve in tow. This place is great, Eve spoke up while looking around at the Batcave. Jeff ignored her and went straight to the Batcomputer. Right before he opened anything, an alert popped up. Jeff wrinkled his brows before clicking on it. Doing so, he found out the reason. Pepper had found out the truth about Obadiah and contacted S.H.I.E.L.D. There was then a confrontation. The result was lots of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents being injured and Obadiah flying off in the warmonger armor. Jeff held his chin as he began to put things together. The fact that he was attacked tonight and Obadiah was done with the suit this night as well, and Chris going for Eve. I know what they are up to. Jeff made it to his feet as he turned to face Eve and Sebastian, who were just confused. Jeff was about to speak when Gwen rushed in and hugged him. Oh my God. You're okay. I heard of the explosion and fire and I thought. Hey, it's okay, I'm here, we all are and we are okay, Jeff comforted Gwen, whose grip was tightening on him. I was scared. I didn't want to go through it again. I don't want to lose you too. Her words touched Jeff's heart as he looked down at her. I'm fine, I'm Batman, remember? Jeff comforted her. Gwen had a smile on her face hearing that. Seeing she was okay, Jeff gave his orders. Okay, you three head out. Jeff gave his order before heading to a mannequin that had his suit. Wait, where are we going? Gwen questioned. If I'm not wrong, there will be a big explosion soon enough and Chris will be there, Jeff explained. Wait, who is Chris? Gwen asked, the current leader of the court. Eve responded to Gwen's query. Ooh, wait, who are you? Gwen started off with a look of realization and ended with a raised brow. I'm Eve. Eve had a grin as she introduced herself. You say that like it explains who you are and why you are here. Gwen spoke up, but Jeff wasn't having any of it. We don't have that much time. Sebastian and Eve, arm yourselves, and Gwen, suit up. Okay, Gwen responded, moving for her bag with her homemade costume. Not that one, Jeff stopped her, which caused her to look at him in absolute confusion. He pressed a button, causing a part of the cave to move and reveal a new batsuit. Gwen's eyes widened as she rushed to touch it. The suit was a black suit with a golden bat symbol with gold lining on the cape along with some gold stripes on the gloves. Is this? Yes, it's yours now. Suit up. Jeff spoke as he put on the watch and activated his suit. Where are you headed, sir? Sebastian questioned as he realized Jeff wasn't coming with them. I'm going to help a friend. Batman left these words before jumping in the Batmobile and speeding off. In Stark's home, he begins to walk around searching for his phone, which he soon finds in the couch under a pillow. He checks the caller ID to see it's Pepper and answers the phone as he sits, but before he can let a word out, a buzzing sound is heard as he loses control of his body and becomes paralyzed. Obadiah rips the phone out of his hands and cuts Pepper's call. Breathe, Obadiah says as he lays him down on the couch. You remember this one, right? He waved the device, which caused the paralysis before Tony. It's a shame the government didn't approve of this. There are so many applications for causing short-term paralysis. Obadiah moved before Tony and took out his earbuds. Tony, when I, ordered the hit on you. He moved with a device to extract the arc reactor from Tony's chest. I worried that I was killing the golden goose. Just fate that you survived that. Ugh. Tony let out a groan as Obadiah began to extract the arc reactor. You had one last golden egg to give. Obadiah brought out the arc reactor and showed it to Tony, who was now struggling to breathe. You think just because you have an idea, it's yours? Your father, he helped give us the atomic bomb. Now what kind of world would we live in if he was as selfish as you? Obadiah had a wide grin as he spoke. Beautiful, this is a masterpiece, this is your legacy, Obadiah said as he sat at Tony's side, as he now had the whole thing at hand. A generation of weapons with this at its heart. How I wish you could see my prototype. It's not as conservative as yours. Too bad you had to involve Pepper in this. I would have preferred she lived. Obadiah left, as he had the arc reactor in a briefcase. Crash. There was a loud crash soon after as Batman jumped in but saw Tony, who was now extremely pale. Stark. Tony made it to the elevator looking as pale as a sheet. The elevator sent him down and he struggled as he made his way to his workshop/garage. His feet gave out, causing him to have to crawl the rest of the journey. He arrived under the table, which held his old arc reactor, but he had no strength to reach it and lay resting against a desk. Tony began to think that was it and slowly accepted that this was where he was going to die, but then he saw something. He saw a hazy image of a giant bat looming over him. Hallucinations. That's unexpected. Tony thought of chalking the image up to his imagination before the memories of the legendary Batman popped into his head, and he realized, before him stood none other than the Batman. Batman grabbed the case that held the old reactor and smashed it, taking the reactor and plunging it into Tony's chest, which caused him to take in a mouthful of air. "Stark, are you okay?" Batman asked, but Tony remained silent, still staring. "Stark, are you okay?" Batman questioned once again, and "Shit, you're real," was Tony's clever response. Batman, seeing he was okay, took a step back to give him room when Tony's eyes widened in panic and he tried to get back to his feet. "Pepper. She's in danger." Tony spat out as he finally made it to his feet. "Tony!" Rhodey's shouting along with hurried footsteps was heard. Batman and Tony turned to the source only to see Rhodey with Agent Maria and a few S.H.I.E.L.D. agents who didn't hesitate to fire as soon as they saw Batman. Jeff turned around, raising his cape to protect Tony from any stray bullets. Batman fired a batarang, which flew past the agents before giving off a purple glow and attracting the weapons out of the agents' hands. They all turned to see what happened, but when they looked back, Batman was gone, leaving only Tony, who was still squatting with both his arms above his head. "Tony!" Rhodey rushed to Tony's side, calling out to him. "Rhodes, yeah, it's me. What's with the suits?" Rhodey proceeded to explain after hearing Tony's question. "Pepper, along with some S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, went after finding out the truth about Obadiah, so she called me and told me to come over. When I arrived, so had these guys. Apparently Obadiah had taken out the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents and kidnapped Pepper." Tony's eyes widened hearing this. "What? How did he power the suit? He just got the arc reactor from me." "We are not clear about that." Maria Hill cut in at this moment, her eyes drawn to the arc reactor in Tony's chest. Tony realized this and spoke up. "Okay, you guys can go." Maria Hill raised a brow at that. "What?" "You heard me. Obadiah already got what he wanted and thinks I'm dead, so highly doubt he's going to come back. So shouldn't you guys be out there looking for him? He's not the only one we are after." Tony tilted his head as he heard her words, showing his confusion. "The Batman? What? He just saved my life from you guys who were shooting at me, by the way." Tony defends Batman. "You might not know this, but Obadiah is not working alone, and those he is working with are in a war against the Batman. From what we've seen in the past, when the Bat goes to war against someone, innocents suffer, so we're taking any one of them in, dead or alive." Tony had a short stare down with Maria after hearing that before he spoke. "You can show yourselves out." Maria nodded to her men before they left. Batman, who was hiding above the building, heard the entire conversation through a bug he left behind. The conversation had answered some questions that popped up in his head. Batman was confused as to why the Warmonger suit was in operation before Tony's arc reactor was stolen, but now he could guess something. The court became a huge variable, which led to events playing out differently. Looking up, the Batwing was here, enabling Batman to jump in and fly into the city to search for Obadiah. Gwen, who had now dubbed herself Ghost Bat, was atop a roof with Sebastian and the mysterious Eve that no one was willing to talk to her about. Boom. A loud explosion, the signal they had all been waiting for, went off, causing them all to turn in that direction. A few minutes earlier, in an office, members of the court were present and seated around a huge table. They had each received a call from Chris telling them to meet here, as he has something important to tell them. The members looked to an empty seat where Chris was supposed to be seated. It had been 10 minutes, yet Chris had yet to arrive. The members began speaking to one another, coming up with their own speculations as to why they were called. The office was soon filled with murmurs, but all murmurs came to a halt when the door was opened. All eyes were drawn to the door as Chris stepped in. Chris was dressed in a tight-fitting combat suit, armed to the teeth, with his hood pulled back. The members of the court followed Chris with their eyes, all having a bad feeling as he made it to his seat. "Gentlemen, I'm glad you all could make it." Chris spoke as he sat, making himself comfortable. "Chris, what is going on?" One of the members spoke up as he stared at Chris's face, which had a smile that gave him chills. "You see, gentlemen, I feel the court has not been fulfilling its full potential. We run but a mere city, but I believe we could do a whole lot more, and so I've been thinking on what exactly the problem is, but then it hit me. At this point, the members of the court felt a strong sense of dread, which they could no longer ignore. Chris continued despite the looks on their faces. The court has too many useless people in it, and it is time for some cutbacks. Bam! A member slammed the table as he stood and shouted at Chris, "What the hell are you going on about?" Chris calmly looked the guy in the eye and continued, "Earlier tonight, I killed Sebastian and Eve, and now it's time the rest of you join them in hell." Chris. The man who stood screamed as he attempted to charge at Chris. He was soon brought to a screeching halt as a knife was sent straight into his eye. The others, seeing the fate of their partner, attempted to leave, but alas, the moment they set their feet into this place, their gates were sealed. Countless soldiers of the court appeared with their weapons aimed at them. Another member tried to reason with Chris. "Chris, this is madness. Without us, you won't be able to properly control the court." Chris dashed the hope that had begun to form within the eyes of the members of the court. "That was the case before, but now I have transferred all your assets to my name. Your assets will contribute to the future of the court, but as for you, your services are no longer required." His words scared them as they all wondered how it is he had done what he said, but they would never figure it out as they were killed the next second. Chris walked through the corpses that now littered the office floor. Taking a last look at them, he turned to the soldiers at his side and ordered, "Burn this place to the ground." After leaving his order, he stepped out whilst pulling his hood up. Chris made it out with the building exploding, but a minute later, turning to look at the blazing building, he had a crazed look in his eye. As he turned back around, though, the smile along with the crazed look in his eye disappeared. Before him was the ghost bat alongside two people he did not expect to see ever again. There they were, Sebastian and Eve, alive and walking. How? Chris couldn't help but question as he saw they were all right. "You should know by now it's not that easy to kill me," Sebastian responded, causing Chris to clench his fist. "I now understand that saying, if you want something done, you have to do it yourself." Chris pulled out his sword as members of the court all popped up by his side. "Just like the old days, huh?" Eve spoke as she readied her gun. "Yeah, just like the old days," Sebastian sighed and turned to face Gwen. "Are you ready, kid? This bastard is also responsible for my dad's death. I'm gonna kill him," Gwen spoke in a voice that seemed devoid of emotion. Sebastian nodded and began to fire at the court alongside Eve, while Ghost Bat rushed with two batarangs held firmly in her hands to meet the members of the court who rushed at her with their own cold weapons at hand. Obadiah at this time had arrived at his new base and hooked up the arc reactor to his warmonger suit. He should be happy that he had succeeded in obtaining the arc reactor, but he was worried as he checked the time. Chris should have called to say he was on his way, but nothing. The fact he was unable to contact him didn't help at all. "Tony is going to stop you," Pepper spoke from her corner, where Obadiah had kept her, drawing him out of his thoughts. "Quiet. Tony should be dead by now, so no one's coming, and you have just outlived your purpose." Pepper's eyes widened as she heard what Obadiah had just said. Pepper's eyes teared up as Obadiah's words hit her. "You're lying." Pepper whispered before she screamed, "You're lying. Tony is not dead." "He can't be," Pepper whispered the last bit. Obadiah attempted to move closer to her when there was a boom followed by debris falling to the floor. Pepper turned away to shield herself from the debris. After a few seconds she turned to have a look, and there he was, in the iconic superhero pose, Tony in his Iron Man armor. "Hey Pep, you don't look so good." The familiar voice came out of the suit, and Pepper couldn't help but smile when she heard the familiar voice. "Oh, my God, Tony, he told me you were dead." "Me? Now that's some bullshit right there," Tony responded. Pepper laughed at that, but her eyes widened as she tried to warn Tony, but was too late. Obadiah in his warmonger suit sent Tony into a wall. "You should have just stayed dead, Tony," Obadiah spoke as he raised his arm and aimed at Tony to blast him, but Tony ducked and flew straight into Obadiah, sending the both of them through the building and finally into the streets busy with traffic. Cars came to a screeching halt as the driver stared wide-eyed at the two figures in the middle of the street. Obadiah was first to make it to his feet before turning to look at Iron Man, who was making it to his feet. Obadiah, looking to his side, spotted an SUV, which was at his side, and raised it over his head to smash it on Iron Man. The woman with her children, who were inside the car, screamed as they realized what was about to happen, but their screams were brought to a halt when strong resistance was felt. Obadiah felt the same resistance and looked above only to see the Batwing in the air with two grappling hooks locked on to the SUV. In the crash, The back of the SUV was ripped out before the inhabitants of the car were pulled out safely. The mother held her children tightly before looking to the one who pulled her out with pure disbelief. One of her children, seeing the figure, spoke out, "Mommy, look, it's Batman." The Batwing released its grip on the SUV before it exploded, with the resulting force sending Obadiah rolling. "Get to safety." Batman turned to the woman and her kids, who nodded and quickly moved away. Iron Man flew to Batman's side before speaking up, "I had that." Batman just gave Iron Man a look after hearing that. Before Iron Man could speak again, Obadiah was back on his feet and pissed. Batman and Iron Man entered into a battle stance seeing this. Gwen was jumping through the members of the court, showing the results of her training as she sent batarangs into anyone who got in her way. Sebastian and Eve, on the other hand, had shifted to cold weapons after running out of bullets, but they were just as deadly. Chris, seeing this, realized that if he just stood there and did nothing, his men would soon be overwhelmed by the three of them, and then it would be too late. Chris didn't hesitate any longer and pulled out twin blades before jumping into the midst of the battle and swung his blade at Eve, who barely raised her weapon in time to defend herself, but in the process, she lost her weapon. Eve grabbed another person and brought the person in front of her as a human shield from Chris, who swung his blade sharply. Eve managed to grab a short blade and charged at Chris, who blocked her easily. "Eve, oh Eve, you've never been a match for me." "Oh shut up, you conceited prick." Eve spat at Chris. Sebastian heard Eve scream and bobbed to the right to avoid an attack, but snatched a knife and fired it at Chris. Chris moved back just in time as a blade came before him and sliced at his face, allowing for Eve to jump back and escape. Chris held his face, which now had a blood-red line that cut across it, before looking to the source. There he was fighting in the midst of court soldiers. His face was still cold. At this moment Chris remembered the old days and just why he was so afraid of Sebastian back in the day. "Ghost Bat, you handle him, I and Eve will deal with the rest and then join you." Sebastian ordered Gwen, who flipped and ran across the court soldiers and jumped to face Chris. Chris reacted in time, pulling out a sword to block Gwen's punch. "You? I wanted Batman himself, although it seems like you got an upgrade. I guess you'll have to do." Gwen had a deep scowl on her face as she fell and swiped at Chris' feet, but he jumped back to avoid it and struck down hard with a sword in hand. Gwen pulled out a batarang as sparks flew out as Chris's sword made contact with her batarang. "Not bad," Chris mocked, to which Gwen responded by gritting her teeth and pushing him off her. Wasting no time, she moved towards him with a kick for the head, but he was quick to avoid it by sidestepping it. The two engaged in a fierce battle with Chris and his sword and Gwen, having two batarangs in hand as daggers. With Batman and Iron Man flew straight at Obadiah, delivering a punch at his head, but he grabbed it just in time and slammed him into the asphalt before blasting him once more. "Contingencies detected," Jarvis reported. "Yeah, detected that too, Jarvis." Tony responded before his eyes widened. Seeing Obadiah's fist coming down, he raised his arms in defense. Obadiah was stunned as Batman had appeared before him and grabbed his arm. Wasting no time, Batman applied pressure to the side and sent a batarang into the shoulder joint, blowing the arm off. Obadiah gritted his teeth and tried to blast Batman with his other hand, but Iron Man came before him and fought back with his repulsors. "Oh, Obi, what's the matter? Need a hand?" Tony mocked Obadiah as he was pushing him back before his repulsors suddenly went out. "Jarvis, what just happened?" Tony questioned, to which Jarvis showed him multiple warning signs and spoke up. "Power at 4%, sir." Batman pulled Tony out of the way of Obadiah's attack with his grappling hook. "Thanks, man," Tony thanked Batman. "What happened?" Batman questioned, "Kinda running low on power right now. I'm going to rip you both to shreds." Obadiah roared, but Batman ignored him, focused on one thing before he spoke to Tony, who was by his side. "I have a plan." Chris had lost the mocking smile he had on his face earlier and was now pissed. He now had countless wounds delivered all over by Gwen, who was otherwise unharmed. To make matters worse, Sebastian, alongside Eve, had taken down almost all of his men, and he was certain once they were done, they would join this brat and end him. Chris wasn't having it and decided to kill Gwen before Sebastian was done, but him being anxious was the beginning of his downfall. Chris lunged at Gwen, but she avoided it and spun around Chris, disarming him before kicking the back of his leg hard. Asterisk crack. A sharp sound was heard, followed by Chris's scream as he went down on one knee. Gwen didn't let up her advantage and followed with an axe kick to Chris's shoulder, effectively rendering that arm useless. With a few more moves, Chris was now completely immobile as Gwen stood over him. Gwen stared him dead in the eye before she began to land blow after blow on him. Sebastian and Eve took out the remaining men in another minute and turned their attention to Gwen and Chris. Sebastian watched for another minute before he stepped up and held Gwen's shoulder. "That's enough, he's already dead." Gwen came to a halt and looked down at the bloodied Chris, who had stopped breathing a while ago. Gwen looked at the corpse's shoulder. Didn't feel like she thought she would. She had gotten revenge, but that hadn't changed anything. Her dad wasn't coming back. She stood and turned to face Sebastian, who knew what she wanted even with the mask on. "Come here," he said, embracing Gwen, who, after close to a minute of silence, spoke but 2 words, "Thank you." Sebastian looked around to see Eve was gone. Tony had entered into a fistfight with Obadiah, who could tell that Tony was running on steam and would soon be out. "You should have just stayed out of my way, Tony." Obadiah pressed down on Tony. Obadiah had a wide grin on his face, but his expression soon changed as tons of warnings appeared on his screen before everything went black. What the hell? It was only at this moment that he realized Batman had taken advantage of the situation to slip away and then mess with his suit, but it was too late, as Batman now stood by Tony's side with the arc reactor. Obadiah wanted to curse once more, but Tony fired a charged uni-beam at him, essentially ending him. Tony watched the Ironmonger suit that was now down and smoking. "Now that's what I call a team-up. Where did he go?" Tony turned to give Batman a high five, but all that was there was the arc reactor, with Batman nowhere to be seen. Eve had gotten into a car and just finished hot wiring it and was about to drive off, but was stopped by the gun aimed at her head. "What did you steal?" Sebastian, with the gun still aimed at her head, questioned. "Now what would give you that idea?" Eve turned to face him with a smile on her face. "Would you stop with the lies? When you started to help us so easily, I had my doubts. You knew Chris well enough to know he would try to kill you when he found you, and yet you took the risk. You're not the kind of woman to take risks if there is nothing to gain. Do you really think so low of me, Sebastian, with the history we share?" Eve tried to talk her way out but was stopped by Sebastian. "It's precisely because of that history that I know you so well." They both shared a look for a minute before Eve sighed and pulled out a thumb drive. "What's on it?" Sebastian asked. Chris couldn't kill the others if there was no way to control what they had. "I'm guessing how to do that is on that," Sebastian spoke in understanding, to which Eve just nodded in agreement. They remained where they were for a minute before Sebastian lowered his gun. "What now?" he asked her. "Don't worry, you and your little Bat family are safe. You have my word, their identities shall never leave my lips." Hearing her words, Sebastian turned to leave. "Don't you miss it?" Eve called out, causing Sebastian to halt. "Don't you miss us, Sebastian?" Eve asked once again. "I do." Sebastian turned with a fond smile on his face. "Then come with me. I would be queen and you would be king. Join me." Tempting offer, but I can't. I made a promise to a boy one rainy night and I intend to keep it. Eve sighed, hearing that before she spoke again. "Then this is goodbye. See you later, Sebastian." Saying so, she wasted no time and drove off with Sebastian watching her leave. Shield helicarrier, Hill, tell me what the hell is going on. Stark and Batman were spotted fighting Obadiah in the streets. An explosion happened across the city, followed by a battle with another bat, Eve, and an unidentified individual fighting what seemed to be ninjas. So I ask again, what the hell is going on? Fury screamed into his comms. Before Hill could respond, though, a voice responded from the shadows behind him. "We destroyed the court." Fury turned to the source and saw the figure who stepped out of the shadows. "I see you changed your suit," Fury spoke, "and you got an eye patch." Batman and Fury stood toe-to-toe, staring each other in the eye. "Why did you send your people after me? You were waging war against the court and this city can't afford any more casualties." "I save lives," Batman argued. "Say that to the lives lost in the Goblin incident." There was a moment of silence between the two. "The next time you send people after me, I won't hold back," Batman spoke as he stepped back into the shadows and disappeared. The next day, every news station was talking about Iron Man and Batman alongside Ghost Bat. At this exact moment, Tony was having a conference to deny the rumors of him being Iron Man, but Tony, being Tony, changed the plan. In the Batcave, did he just reveal his identity? Gwen asked as she watched Tony utter the 3 iconic words that started a new era. Wait, does that mean we're going to do the same? Gwen turned to Jeff, who was bench pressing. No, that's his way, but it is not ours, he said, so he put his weights down before moving before the screen, which had some red dots showing. This world is about to face many threats and we must be prepared, but before those threats arrive, we will deal with the old enemies who have managed to survive till now. From now on I am Batman. Jeff stood before the screen with both Gwen and Sebastian by his side. Gunshots, alongside the blaring sounds of alarms, resounded through a facility. The guards kept firing into the distance as fear overwhelmed them like a blanket. Damn, what the hell are these two? One of them questioned his friend, but all he received for an answer was a scream. The guards turned to the source of the scream to see a pair of white eyes staring right back at them. The guards attempted to aim at the figure, but she rushed at them, closing the distance. Her elbow went straight to the throat of one of them before she grabbed his gun and sent it into the gut of another, whom she then flipped into another. Avoiding an attack from behind, she quickly moved on to the others. The next minute, Gwen stood in full gear with the guards sprawled out around her feet. In an office filled with monitors showing what was happening in the facility, Amun saw what was happening and cursed as he took a briefcase and headed for the exit, but before him was none other than the Batman. Damn it. The Mun screamed as he grabbed a gun and aimed at the bat, but before he could fire, a batarang flew and knocked the gun right out of his hands. His eyes followed the gun as it slid away before bringing his sight back, and as he did, he realized Batman was now only mere inches away from him. Batman grabbed him by the throat and questioned, "What's in the case?" The Mun struggled before he uttered 2 words. "Hail, Hydra," the Mun managed to utter before foaming at the mouth and dying. Batman dropped the corpse and watched it coldly before taking the case and disappearing. Batman and Ghost Bat were on the rooftop of a building opposite the facility as they watched police cars surround the facility and officers rush in. "Splendid job, Master Jeffrey and Mistress Gwen. May I offer you a cookie?" Sebastian offered as Batman and Ghost Bat made their way into the cave. "No thanks, Sebastian," Batman refused as he headed to the Bat computer. "I'll have a cookie." Gwen reached for one. These are good. Jeff, you really should try these." Sebastian smiled before leaving the plate of cookies with Gwen and moving to Batman's side. "I take it tonight was a success?" Sebastian asked. "Indeed it was. Another Hydra site has been taken down." "That's 9 this week alone, sir." Hydra has been hiding in the shadows for years and has infiltrated almost all levels of government, Batman continued as he tried to unlock the case before him. "Going straight for the head in this case wouldn't work with them. If I tried without pulling down their mask, I would have Fury and all the others thinking I'm the enemy. It wouldn't affect me all that much, but if I can deal with Hydra in a much more efficient way, I don't see why not." A click sound was heard as the briefcase was unlocked. Inside the case a device was revealed, Mwam Munin, and incomprehensible sounds were heard from Batman's side. Both Jeff and Sebastian turned to the source, which was Gwen, who had a mouthful of cookies. Looking at the two who were staring at her, Gwen realized and spoke once more after emptying her mouth. "Oh sorry," I said. "What's that?" "This is an external hard drive," Jeff spoke up before connecting it to his computer, but of course it was encrypted. "It's encrypted with a military-grade encryption." "So, now what?" Gwen asked. To Gwen's question, Batman stood as his mask retracted and turned to face Gwen. "Now you go home and get ready for tomorrow. I have business to attend to myself. That reminds me, the past few months the news about you has changed, and when I say you, I mean Jeffrey King. I realized it's time I stopped pretending to be something I'm not." Gwen scoffed before turning to leave. Batman took one last look at his computer, which had a timer for 12 hours on it, showing it would take 12 hours to fully decrypt the hard drive, and then proceeded to leave the cave as well. The next day, countless vehicles arrived at the King Manor, which had been rebuilt once more, as Jeff was behind a podium giving a speech. "And that is the reason I've decided to start the King Foundation, which will provide cheap, affordable housing as well as education and homes to the street children of this city. I believe that if one has the means, they should provide to those in need. Thank you." My people will answer all questions you might have." Applause alongside the camera flashes resounded once Jeff was done. Well, it seems what I've been hearing about you is true. You've changed, my friend." Tony came up to Jeff's side. "Now that's rich coming from you. According to the papers, you become some sort of symbol of peace." Jeff responded, "What can I say? The people love me." Tony had a smug look on his face. Jeff chuckled at that before continuing, "I heard the state's sending you to court. Just some old bald heads trying to take my suit. Wanna come watch me take them down a notch? Who knows? If I'm free, then I won't miss the show." Their conversation ended when Tony walked away and Hill appeared before Jeff. "We meet again, Mr. King." "Ms. Andrews, nice to see you again," Jeff responded with a smile on his face. "Please, call me Susan." She had a charming smile on her face as she uttered those words. "Then I suppose it's only fair you call me Jeff." The two proceeded to have a discussion as Jeff put in-depth thought into the whole situation. The last time, he had just popped up in Fury's office with no warning as a way to scare him and tell him he could find him wherever he was. From the fact that Hill was here once again and still assuming this false identity, Jeff could infer Fury was even more desperate to obtain his identity now. Jeff even had a strong hunch that Fury wanted to return the favor by probably appearing at his base when he least expected it, just as he did with Stark. The conversation between the two somehow ended with Jeff now having a date with Hill next weekend. "She looks like a lovely lady." Sebastian came up to Jeff's side as Hill walked away. "She's with S.H.I.E.L.D., Jeff cut off Sebastian. "Oh dear, indeed, I just need to convince her that I am not the Batman so all this can be put behind me." "Yes, sir, I've made contact and have made plans to see each other next weekend. There is a high chance that Jeffrey King is the Batman." Hill, who was hidden behind a pillar, spoke to Fury through a hidden earpiece. "Good job, Hill. Keep me updated on all that happens." Fury ordered, "Yes, sir," Hill responded before blending back into the party. A few more hours had passed and the people had left, including Hill leaving Jeff and Sebastian back at the manor. As luck would have it, an alarm went off signaling Jeff that the decryption was complete. Jeff made his way back to the Batcave and began to go through the files. Sebastian soon came down to join him and saw the look on Jeff's face. "I take it you've found something, sir." "Based on the information on here, Hydra has plans to work with a Mun called Dreykov." Jeff told Sebastian what he had discovered. Sebastian held his chin as he thought that the name sounded familiar. After a few more seconds of thought, Sebastian finally remembered where he had heard that name. Dreykov, if I remember correctly, was the one who was in charge of the Red Room, but if my memory serves me right, he should have died in Budapest. Well, it says here that Hydra has dealings with him, apparently providing him some sort of chemicals. Sebastian crinkled his brows hearing what Jeff said. "So what now, sir?" Sebastian finally questioned. "Clear my schedule, I'm going to Budapest." "Right away, sir." Budapest. Jeff had arrived before a coffee shop. He was fully disguised as he stepped into the shop, which was almost completely empty with only 4 patrons and a barista. Jeff took a quick glance at the 4 patrons, who were all female. Jeff approached the barista and made an order just as was described in the files on the hard drive. The barista took a good look at him before directing him to a table with her eyes. Jeff made it to the table with a cup of coffee in his hand. As he sat down, Jeff could feel all the eyes focus on him, but he ignored the looks. After a whole minute, one of the patrons stood and started to head towards Jeff, but before she could get to him, Jeff noticed something at the door. 2 people were about to enter with guns at hand, but Jeff saw them and quickly got under the table, using it as a shield. Gunfire was soon heard as the 2 people who had hoods on with assault rifles at hand lit up the place. The people in the bar tried to fight back, but the 2 took them all out. One moved the gun to where Jeff was hiding, but before they could pull the trigger, Jeff smashed the table at them. He quickly moved to the next, aiming the gun away before punching the person in the gut, which caused them to let go of the gun and fall back, causing their hood to come off to reveal the person under the hood was a young lady. Jeff sent his gun into the other's hand, causing her to drop her gun before he followed with a well-timed kick to her jaw, which knocked her out. He quickly moved to the other and stomped her hand, which caused her to scream out in pain, "I have some questions and you are going to provide me with answers." After moving to an apartment, which was apparently their hideout, Jeff got the gist of the situation. The two before him were former widows. Apparently, after Natasha escaped, Dreykov got pissed by her betrayal and decided psychological control was not enough. He began researching better ways of controlling them, and he recently discovered a chemical that allowed him to perfectly control each and every one of them. The two before him managed to avoid that fate, but they are also trying their hardest to rescue the other girls. They came up with the idea of using the reagent to reverse engineer everything and free the others, but they ended up meeting Jeff. Looking at them closely for a minute, Jeff decided they were telling the truth and put down the gun, which was aimed at them. The two girls looked at him with confusion. "I'm not with Hydra. I followed some clues and ended up at that cafe. What are your names?" The girls looked at each other before one of them turned to Jeff and spoke up. "You can't expect us to tell you our names when you won't tell us yours." The girls were met with silence and Jeff's patented bat glare, which caused them to break out in a cold sweat. "KC, Jessica," the two blurted out. "Your real names?" Jeff's cold voice caused their eyes to widen for a moment before they spoke once more. "Anya, Inessa," the two decided to mention their names. "How sure are you that if you have the reagent, you could make a cure?" Jeff asked an important question after they had given him their names. The two exchanged looks once more before Anya spoke up. "I have a friend who has a lab. He's at least 70% sure that if he has his hands on the reagent, he would be able to help us. Oliver, I may know a place we can get this reagent." Jeff gave a fake name to the girls. At the cafe where the shootout took place, countless officers had surrounded the place and were trying to figure out what exactly had happened and who was responsible. Opposite the cafe, a young girl was watching the scene through binoculars. She had blonde hair, which was tied behind her into a ponytail. She was decked in an all-black combat suit, just as the other four girls in the room with her. The young girl moved her hand to her ear and began to communicate with someone. "They are all dead," she reported. "What about the attacker?" The voice from the other side questioned. "We have been unable to confirm, but we suspect it might have been Anya and Inessa," the girl continued to report. "Those traitors, find them and kill them." The voice gave a final order. The girl who had now put away the binoculars turned to face the other girls, who all stepped out of the shadows with an emotionless look on their faces. "So your name is Oliver?" Inessa questioned Jeff as she grabbed a pistol. Jeff just looked her in the eye and spoke up, ignoring her question. "The files that led me to that cafe also have information pertaining to a facility that is located here in Budapest. I'm confident that this facility should have some of this reagent that we need." The girls were now attentive as they listened to the information released by Jeff. "We can go there and get what we need. I advise we do it quickly as well, since the two of you were not exactly subtle at the cafe. I'm sure the Red Room probably has a few widows on your trail as we speak." The two remained silent. They knew he was right, but in their defense, this wouldn't have happened if he didn't show up. Their plan was to attack the supplier and obtain the reagent from them, but he had impersonated the supplier, derailing their plans. Jeff, seeing they understood the danger they were in as well, followed the two who had packed up and left the apartment. An hour after they had left, the widows had found the apartment and began to comb through it, but of course they were unable to find the girls. Seeing that they were unable to find them, the girls began to search through all that was left in an attempt to figure out where they had gone. The blonde widow soon found a document that detailed what the girls knew about the chemical controlling them as well as their ideas on how to stop it. The blonde widow's hand moved to her ear as she reported her findings.
And that concludes this episode. If you enjoyed it, I'd seriously love it if you guys could leave a like on the video, as it genuinely helps out so much, and it keeps me going, plus it takes only 1 second. That said, have a wonderful day. See you in the next one.